to the land and by paying respect to their elders, both past and present. We have, I think, two apologies tonight and one request for remote attendance. We've got apologies from Councillors Shetty and Langford, and we've got a request for remote attendance from Councillor Scott, who for health reasons. And so I'll move that those apologies and requests be accepted. Is there a seconder for that? Seconded by Councillor Griffiths. All those in favour, against, declare that carried. The notice of webcasting, just to let you know, there aren't actually many items that people can speak on from the public gallery tonight, but the comments that you make at the meeting are recorded on YouTube, and so they do have legal ramifications. We'd like to let you know at the start. I'll now read the statement of ethical obligations. The Mayor and Councillors are bound by the oath or affirmation of office made at the start of the council term to undertake their civic duties. Sorry, Councillor De Cruz. All good. Am I okay to proceed? Thank you. The Mayor and Councillors are bound by the oath or affirmation of the office made at the start of the council term to undertake their civic duties in the best interests of the people of the Inner West Council and to faithfully and impartially carry out the functions, powers, authorities and discretions vested in them under the Local Government Act or any other act to the best of their skill and judgment. I can tell you that's a very long sentence. It's a good 55, 60 words. It is also a requirement that the Mayor and Councillors disclose conflicts of interest in relation to items listed for consideration on the agenda or which are considered at this meeting in accordance with the Council's Code of Conduct and Code of Meeting Practice. Now, disclosures. Do we have any? Yes, Councillor De Cruz.
Out of abundance of caution, I'm going to make a disclosure on a pecuniary significant disclosure on item 18 and leave the meeting for that one. Thank you.
Can I clarify, disclosures that were made at the previous meeting about items that have been carried over, are those disclosures required to be made again? I'll ask that of the officers.
Yes, they would have to be made again. It's a new council meeting, so the minutes will need to reflect.
Thank you for that. Councillor De Cruz, did you make a disclosure about that item at the previous meeting? Oh, okay.
Luckily, we didn't consider it.
Yeah. Do you want to tell us the nature of your conflict?
It's the same conflict which I made the disclosure on item 49 last week, which is my brother owns investment properties in the area which is affected by the housing reforms.
Okay, well, that is definitely an abundance of caution, but thank you for that. Any further disclosures? Councillor Howard?
Thank you. I have two disclosures. Declare a non-significant, non-pecuniary interest in item 2, update on Parramatta Road Corridor Urban Transformation Strategy. As I work in the Office of the Minister for Transport, given this is a planning matter and out of an abundance of caution, I'll remove myself from the chamber for discussion and voting. I also declare a significant pecuniary interest in item 15, safe cycling in the Inner West petition, as my primary residence is located on one of the streets where works are proposed to be expedited. I will leave the chamber for discussion and voting.
Okay, thank you for that. Any further disclosures? Will someone move their adoption? Moved by Councillor Stevens, seconded by Councillor Atkins. Can I just clarify that both councillors have provided those in writing to the minute takers? Councillor De Cruz is about to. I'll put that. All those in favour? Against? Declare that carried. Can I ask everyone to please join me in a moment of quiet contemplation? Thank you for that. Sorry, thank you for that. We'll move on to the public forum. The one item for which there is a registered speaker is item 2, notice of motion to rescind Parramatta Road Corridor Urban Transformation Strategy. And that speaker is Hall Greenland of Leichhardt, online. Hall, are you there?
I am here. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you loud and clear now. Just let you know you've got 3 minutes under the code of meeting practice, and you'll hear the following bell after 2.5 minutes. And that's to let you know that your time has almost expired. Over to you.
Thank you. I'll begin by saying that the original motion of May the 21st to effectively accept the PR cuts planning proposal and send it to the Department of Planning for finalisation in Gazette was an egregious travesty of public participation in planning. For that reason alone, it should be rescinded. When you're considering determining a planning proposal, there are 2 simple things you must do. 1, notify affected residents that you are, and 2, consider their submissions. It's public participation in planning 101, and it's common courtesy as well. Neither of these 2 requirements was met at your last meeting. As for notification, all that was on the agenda of the last meeting of May 21st was a report from staff about the delay in progressing this proposal. There was no notice to the residents who are vitally concerned with this matter that it would be summarily dealt with at this meeting, was sprung on the meeting. And 2, as for residents and public submissions, there's been no report to Council on these nearly 6 months after submissions closed. Residents and environment groups made their submissions in good faith. They deserve careful consideration. When this original motion was passed, there was much cranky talk from some councillors of the submissions from SES, Sydney Water, Transport for New South Wales and Department of Planning, but nothing of the residents' concerns and proposals, many of which overlapped and anticipated those from the state agencies. This whole process around the PR cuts planning proposal certainly runs counter to the spirit and the letter of the Environmental Planning and Assessment Act, which governs planning in this state. This Act has as one of its key objectives to increase public participation in planning. We haven't had that, nor have Council's own policy documents on public consultation and participation been complied with. The framers of the Environmental Planning and Assessment Act, a great reform of the Rand Labor government, envisaged planning as a partnership between councillors, planners and residents. Residents were not seen as nuisances. The aim was to involve them, not ignore them. At the May 21st meeting, there was much talk too of the housing crisis. But the Council's own planners have made quite clear that there will be no affordable housing in the West Leichhardt or Taverns Hill North section of this planning proposal, and less than 1% overall. It was for this reason that residents pressed Council to urge the state and federal government to buy the adjoining Best and Less site for model public housing. I know 1 or 2 councillors want to throw my name around as some sort of devil incarnate, but this suggestion, along with the concerns about biodiversity, came from residents, not me. Residents, in fact, responded to this planning proposal in good faith, looking to protect the environment and advance social equity. That's what you get when you plan with residents, not against them. What this rescission motion aims to do, I believe, is to take Council back to the stage where they listen and positively respond to residents, to partnership with them in better planning. It's time to do that. Thank you, Council.
Thanks very much, Mr. Greenland. I, for one, don't think you're the devil incarnate. You're a highly respected long-term politician. I don't consider that a pejorative term. Okay, now I've been informed that there is also one person here who tried to register to speak to the Mayoral Minute, item 1, renovating Leichhardt Oval and Leichhardt Park Aquatic Centre, but was unable to do so successfully online before the cut-off this afternoon. Can I ask, is that person here? Excellent. Can I seek the leave of the meeting to allow the speaker to address us? Thank you. Moved by Councillor Howard, seconded by Councillor Lockie. You want to come forward? Let us, I like your colours. Let us know your name and your view on the motion.
Will do. Thank you, Darcy. Thank you to the council for having me today. Just a little background. My name's Paddy Tobin. I've started this Save Leichhardt Oval group on Facebook, which now have 77,000 members and counting, all of which share their past and present memories of the Eighth Wonder, including stories such as having their ashes scattered at this oval. Now, I was never into sport as a kid till my dad took me to a game at Leichhardt when I was just 6 years old. From then on, I fell in love with not only rugby league, but the eighth wonder in itself. Not only do West Tigers play there, it's also becoming a growing hub for women's sport, with the 5 times champions of the Women's A-League in Sydney FC playing 9 games this season. Leichhardt Oval could be the growing hub for women's sport that Sydney so desperately needs. As we saw the other night with 76,000 supporters coming out to watch the Matildas play on a cold Monday night at a core stadium. Leichhardt Oval will play a massive part of the shifting sporting culture in this country if it gets the funding it deserves. Going to Leichhardt Oval sometimes got nothing to do with the sport, as it's about the community value it brings. Seeing ex-coaches, friends, family from past years, having a drink after the game at one of the many pubs that Balmain has to offer on Darling Street. We hope you can continue this support through this proposal. A $10 million investment now will deliver results 100 times over in the decades ahead. Think of the local businesses that benefit when the Oval is full of fans, including those pubs. But it's not just about the local economy. It's the benefit of people in fitness and in wellness, and also puts Leichhardt and the Inner West on the map. As in the group, we have people from England, New Zealand, and even USA showcasing how Leichhardt Oval is on their bucket list to watch sports. This proposal is in the spirit of the community. Leichhardt Oval is our home, our heritage, and our heart. And so please join the fight to help save Leichhardt Oval. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. Okay, that concludes the speakers from the gallery tonight. So we'll move on. There's no condolence motions. We'll move on to the one Mayoral minute that has been tabled, which I'll now move. And it's in regards to Leichhardt Oval. It is crunch time in the long struggle to save Leichhardt Oval. Since Council adopted the Leichhardt Oval Masterplan last December, there's been much speculation, increasing speculation about funding that could be made available to renovate the ground, but as yet, no investment has been allocated. Council has invested more than $7.2 million over recent years to maintain and improve the ground, but without a major upgrade in the immediate future, Leichhardt Oval will become unsafe for use as a sporting facility that hosts large crowds. It's time for Inner West Council to commit to funding that we can provide to save Leichhardt Oval and implement our master plan, unanimously adopted. Council is well advanced in planning for the renovation of Leichhardt Park Aquatic Centre as well. The main Olympic pool, having been built in the 1960s, has reached the end of its life cycle. Councillors are all aware of that from the numerous briefings that we've received. There is $40 million allocated in the draft budget over the next 3 years to renovate Leichhardt Park Aquatic Centre. This includes the following: construction of a new 8-lane 50-metre pool, heated, refurbishment of the outdoor children's pool, a new 25-metre pool with a movable floor, spectator seating and shade structures, a new barbecue and picnic area, and new outdoor water playground, energy efficient heating and filtration system to be implemented throughout the facility. With final design of the renovation of LPAC yet to be completed, there is time for that renovation to be strengthened to maximise the utility of the aquatic centre to support sporting users of the renovated Leichhardt Oval. This could include the provision of swimming, rehabilitation and gymnasium facilities for use by sporting clubs that are training and playing at Leichhardt Oval. The Chief Financial Officer advises that due to Council's strong financial position, Inner West Council is able to allocate $10 million for the upgrade of Leichhardt Oval to be funded from existing reserves. Council has also allocated $40 million in our draft budget over the next 3 years to fund the upgrade of Leichhardt Park Aquatic Centre. The combination of these two major projects would see a $50 million funding commitment from the Council for the Leichhardt Park Sport and Recreation Precinct. And so I propose the following: that Council amend the 2024-25 budget to be adopted at the June Ordinary Council meeting to incorporate $50 million in funding for the upgrades of Leichhardt Oval and Leichhardt Park Aquatic Centre, and to support the Leichhardt Park Sport and Recreation Precinct, and that $10 million of this funding is to be dedicated to the implementation of the Leichhardt Oval Master Plan. I'll move that way. Is there any discussion? Councillor Stamlis.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The first issue is I believe that we already have the 40.
Councillor Stamlis, can I clarify? Are you speaking to the motion, or are you Asking questions.
Question first.
Okay, no problem.
I believe
Please
that
proceed.
the $40 million has already been allocated for LPAC. Is that correct?
Put that question to the council officers.
Through your chair, that's correct. That's what
That's
it's
correct. Yeah, so we're not really talking about that. That's in budget already. Yeah.
Through your
I
chair.
think that question's been answered.
Thank you. All right. Yeah.
Councillor Stamlis?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look,
Sorry,
I think,
Councillor Stamlis, are you asking a further question,
No,
or are you
no,
speaking? So you've concluded
obviously.
your questions?
Yeah, that's right.
Please proceed.
Mr. Mayor, I agree with you. It's time to start sorting out what's going on with Leichhardt Oval, which is the essence of this discussion, given that it's confirmed that the $40 million for the Aquatic Centre is in budget. Then it's really about the $10 million and what happens with that. We need to sort out what's going on. Are we going to get that funding from state and federal government that's been, I think, committed to, but we don't see it. It's certainly not there. So I'm proposing a number of amendments for consideration by councillors tonight, so that we have a whole plan for the Oval rather than a $10 million plan for the Oval. We have a broader and bigger plan for that. And these amendments are as follows. First of all...
Well, just a moment, Councillor Stamlis. I'll just seek clarification from the council officers. But I believe that the correct procedure is that there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 amendments on the screen, and they will need to be dealt with sequentially.
Thank you. Yep.
I haven't read them as yet, as
Sure.
you haven't shared them with me, but
Sure.
I'll just go back. I'll ask the minute takers to go back to the first amendment. If you could display that on the screen, please, clearly, so that everybody can see. Could you enlarge the font a little bit? Thank you. So the First Amendment is that prior to any decision to allocate funds from Council's depreciation reserve, the Council confirmed that it will be receiving federal and state grants, and what the value of these grants will be. Is there a seconder for that motion? Seconded by Councillor Atkins. Do you wish to speak to the amendment, Councillor Stamlis?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Please proceed.
So basically, we want to show our public that our financial management and the oversight of that by the councillors is effective. And in light of that, when we decide to allocate funding from our reserves, we would also like to know, given that we've been part of this has been promised, $20 million from state government, $20 million from federal government, I think, if I recall correctly, that money will be coming to us, or possibly council has the potential to actually debate for more, discuss additional funding once we have a program of items that we think would make this workable and most effective for the public, future use for either NRL or future use for women's sports, that we can make sufficient funds available. So this is simply saying...
Councillor Stamlis, oh, sorry, I'll just seek clarification. So the bell's just rung. When Councillor Stamlis was asking the question in the first instance, that's not part of his time. So does that mean he still has more time to go, or... Sorry for the confusion. Was the time being made from when he started speaking?
Only started speaking now, not at questions.
Okay, sorry, forgive me. Your time has concluded. Do you wish to speak to it, Councillor Atkins?
No, I don't.
Thank you for that. Councillor Drury?
Mayor, can I ask Councillor Stamlis how much is in the depreciation reserve at present that he's concerned about?
Councillor Drury has posed a question to Councillor Stamlis about how much funding is in the depreciation reserve that he's just based his speech upon.
Look, I think over the past year it went from about 76 to about 84 million from what I understand.
Thank you for that. Councillor Drury, does that satisfy you? Thank you for that. Did you wish to speak to the item, to the amendment? No. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak to the amendment? Councillor De Cruz?
Yes, I've got a question to the relevant officer.
Can I just ask, and forgive me, I'm not meaning to be in any way disrespectful. There's 5 amendments here. Will you be deliberately fulfilling 3 questions on every single amendment?
To the relevant officer, can you explain what the depreciation reserve is, because my understanding is that council doesn't pay tax and so doesn't depreciate items.
I'll put that question to the council officers.
Through your chair, depreciation reserve is set aside for every dollar that we have in depreciation. We put it aside for eternal restricted reserve so that we can fund renewal of a council's assets. It's still although council does not pay tax, it's still required in AASB standards to report on depreciation of assets.
So can I clarify that the depreciation money is used for renewal of our assets?
Councillor De Cruz, I'd just respectfully remind you that questions to council officers need to be put through the chair.
Through the chair.
Sorry, what was your question, councillor?
Through the chair, can you confirm that the depreciation reserve is used for renewals?
I'll put that question to the council officers.
Through your chair, that's correct. Used for renewal of council assets.
We could all accept that Leichhardt Oval's an existing venue. Councillor Lockie. Oh, sorry, no. Now I've got Councillor De Cruz. Did you have any further questions? Did you wish to speak to the item? No? To the amendment? Councillor Lockie?
Just a question which I think may have to go to you, Chair. Just in relation to the federal and state funding that's been reported, I believe that was 20 million at federal level and 10 million at state level. Are you able to shed any light on that funding and whether it's confirmed and what conditions might be attached to it, if there is any confirmation of that coming?
Happy to take that question. Thank you. There has been no funding confirmed at all. We're in the same position that we've been in for the last 15 years or so in advocating for Leichhardt Oval. And so I think it's clear in the motion that I'm proposing that despite all of the speculation, I'm proposing that the council make a commitment without any guarantee of what state or federal funding might be available. We all remember when Dominic Perrottet, Premier of New South Wales, alleged Tigers fan, he briefed out to all of the media and the whole sporting community that there was $50 million coming for Leichhardt Oval, and it never appeared. So I want to be really frank about the fact that what I'm proposing is that we make our own commitment now, knowing that there's no commitment at this stage from the state or federal governments at all. Any further debate of the Stamoulis-Atkins amendment? I might just speak briefly to it. Well, no, I just have. I think that's the crux of the issue. So I'll put the Stamoulis-Atkins amendment. All those in favour, please raise your hands. In support, I have Councillors De Cruz, Griffiths, Atkins, Stamoulis. Councillor Shetty, are you in favour or against? Oh, she's an apology. Sorry, it's only Councillor Scott that's online. Councillor Shetty had recorded that she was going to be in attendance, but at the last minute informed us that she was an apology. Councillor Scott? Against? Yep. All those against the amendment, please raise your hands. That includes Councillors Lockie, Drury, Sardulius, the Deputy Mayor, Councillor Stevens, Councillor Howard, Councillor D'Arienzo, Councillor Scott and myself. That has been defeated. Now, in regards to the next amendment, it's my assessment that this is actually a foreshadowed motion. The amendment reads that in order to establish the best priorities for the future of Leichhardt Oval, that Council confirm whether or not the NRL intend to use Leichhardt Oval for NRL games. Well, no, actually that's not. That is an amendment. But it's not the NRL who determines that. It's the West Tigers who would determine that. So I accept that that's an amendment, not a foreshadowed motion. Is there a seconder for the amendment? I'm happy to incorporate that as long as you're willing to amend the wording to say West Tigers.
Sure.
The NRL don't determine it.
Okay, that's fine. Yep.
So that's accepted. We'll move to the third amendment. If I can ask the minute takers to please display that on the screen. Yep. The Council to establish whether or not any potential federal and/or state funding would be contingent upon NRL games being played at Leichhardt Oval. I'm not sure that that's the sentence structure of that is correct. How does that differ from point one, Councillor Stamoulis?
Remove the two But we're saying here, is any of that, so basically, there's been a commitment to funds we've got in the earlier amendment, but here we're saying, is it contingent upon that we accept or that there are NRL games being played there, in which case, if West Tigers and NRL say there will be no games there, then do we not get funding at all? So we need to find that out. What I'm trying to do is establish the broader picture of what we can achieve at
I know, but it's just that the sentence doesn't make sense.
Yes, take out the two. Oh, yeah, that's good. That's pretty good. Yeah,
Okay, I'll read it again.
that's good. Yeah.
That council establish whether or not any potential federal and/or state funding would be contingent upon NRL games being played at Leichhardt Oval.
Yeah.
Okay, no problem.
Yeah.
Happy to incorporate that.
Chair. Mr. Mayor,
Yes, Councillor Scott.
can I ask a question of you as the mover of this motion who's accepted these amendments? Can I clarify whether it is your intention and the intention of Councillor Stamalos that when you are referring to NRL, are you referring to the game of rugby league or are you referring to the men's NRL competition? Because if you intend to include if it matters whether NRLW is being played there, that is not the same as NRL.
In regards to the amendment that's already been incorporated or there's so many amendments, into the next amendment or to the one that I've already agreed to?
If the minute takers could scroll back to the one that's been agreed to, I can't actually see them all online at the moment.
That's been incorporated, so I'm not able to recommit that because I've incorporated it into the primary motion. The last sentence reads that council establish whether or not any potential federal and/or state funding would be contingent upon NRL games being played at Leichhardt Oval. I suppose it would be up to you if you wanted to move a further amendment to the wording that has been incorporated into the primary motion.
I'm sorry, I wasn't proposing an amendment. I was asking a question, which is...
But you're not able to ask a question about the amendment that's already been incorporated. So you can ask a question about, that's why I was asking, are you asking about the next amendment, which is now no longer on the screen?
What is the amendment that we're talking about now? The
next amendment from Councillor Stamalos is that council approach the NRL to discuss funding for Leichhardt Oval.
Okay. All right. I'm happy to ask a question about that amendment, and depending on the answer, I might move another amendment.
Okay, no problem.
Yes.
No, sorry, I'll just go to Councillor Stamalos. I'll ask first if there's a second. I'm also happy to incorporate this one, so I'll go to Councillor Scott to ask the question about that amendment.
Thank you for your patience. Councillor Stamalos and Mr. Mayor, as the acceptor of these amendments, is it your intention when you're discussing the future of Leichhardt Oval and whether funding is contingent on various games being played there, are you intending to refer only to the men's NRL league, or does it matter for the purposes of these amendments, which have some been accepted, whether there is women's NRLW being played there because they are different leagues? If you ask the West Tigers whether they intend to play NRL games there, that refers only to the men's competition. If you want to know whether the West Tigers
I can't take the question because I'm...
league there, it's both.
Thanks very much, Councillor Scott. I can't take the question because I'm not the mover, but Councillor Stamalos, I'll put that question to you.
Yeah, look, the assumption there is that I'd assumed that the NRL would be covering both NRL and NRLW, but I assumed NRL was the agency that divvied up the funds. If that's wrong, then please correct it. Yeah.
Sorry, can you clarify?
Well, sorry.
I'm trying to seek discussion with that body.
I know, but Councillor Scott is asking whether you would be willing to incorporate women's rugby league into the discussion with the NRL.
Yeah, I mean, it's obvious women's...
well, it's not obvious because you didn't put it in the wording, but you're happy with it.
Yeah, sorry. No, it's absolutely not obvious at all. And as someone who, is moving amendments about a matter that the mover of the motion cares very deeply about, it would be important that your language is accurate the NRL and the NRLW are different things, and NRL is not a sport. The game is rugby league.
Okay, well, can I propose, just in the interest of moving things along,
Yep, that's good.
that I'll incorporate the Stamoulis amendment, that it read that council approach the NRL to discuss funding for Leichhardt Oval for men's and women's sport. Are you happy with that, Councillor Scott?
That is fine with.
Councillor Stamoulis, you happy with that?
Yes, that's fine.
Excellent. Okay, we'll incorporate that. So we'll move on to the fourth Stamoulis amendment. If I can ask the minute takers to display that on the screen so that we can all read it. And the amendment is that in recognition of the significant funding by council on Leichhardt Oval, that council allocate an appropriate number of hours of use on Leichhardt Oval by the community each week. Councillor Stamoulis, did you wish to speak to that?
Just very briefly, you mentioned in the mayoral minute that council provided significant funding in the past for Leichhardt Oval. To see the community being able to use this asset, obviously, you can't conflict with the, current usage on weekends or evenings when that occurs. But I think it's time now to add some hours there for community use of that oval. Thanks.
Okay, thank you for that. I'll just, is there a seconder for that amendment? Seconded by Councillor De Cruz. Did you wish to speak to it?
Yes, I definitely would like to second and ask your support on this amendment, given your track record, accepting them into your... No, I don't think that's it. It was the one about the community access, because I'm actually concerned that we are giving our limited open space to a professional sport and league or whatever it's called, and depriving our community of significant green space to play their own sport. So, for example, on Saturdays, I think it's very, very difficult to get onto a ground, and women generally have to play on a Sunday. So it would be great if this oval could be actually made available to our community to play sport on. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'll just speak briefly against the amendment. There's 120 sporting fixtures at Leichhardt Oval this year. It's the hardest working ground in Sydney. I believe that all of those uses are community uses. I don't know what the definition being used by Councillor Stamoulis or other councillors is, but for example, the highest intake event would be a West Tigers game. I consider all the people who come to the West Tigers games to be members of the community, and the sense of community at those games is pretty strong. Spirit level's very high. So I don't think there's any existing use of Leichhardt Oval that is not community use. We definitely, I personally am passionate that if we do finally get the funding for the renovation of Leichhardt Oval, that there should be 50% of all of the content should be women and girls sport. That hasn't been something that's been advocated a great deal by some of the people who've already addressed this motion, but I think that's really important. That's not something that we can really consider or determine until we actually get the money. We had $1 for every time we thought we might get money for Leichhardt Oval, we would have saved the ground a long time before now. So, and one last point that is important, I know there's a lot of horticulturalists amongst the elected representatives here. One of the reasons that Leichhardt Oval is still alive is because we've invested so heavily in the quality of the playing surface, and that hasn't been easy to do. But you know, the Spanish women's FIFA World Cup winning team played their captain's run on Leichhardt Oval last year before they won the World Cup. That's because of the quality of the surface. So if you say, we don't care about that anymore, we're just going to get as much use as we can out of the ground, we'll lose a lot of the content that we've already had. So I think this is an ill thought out amendment, and I don't support it. So I'll put the Stamoulis De Cruz amendment. All those in favour, please raise your hands. In support, I have 5 councillors. All those against? Against, there are 8 councillors. That has been defeated. We'll move on to the 5th Stamoulis amendment to the mayoral minute. Can I ask the minute takers please to display that on the screen so that all councillors are aware of what they're debating? Okay, well, I guess they're two separate amendments, so there's actually 6 Stamoulis amendments. I tell you what, it's a lot of amendments for someone who might vote for the motion.
And doesn't know the difference between NRL and NRLW.
Councillor Scott, I'll ask you to refrain. Okay, with the next the next amendment from Councillor Stamoulis, long-time supporter of Leichhardt Oval, is that Council report on the risks of removing $10 million from the depreciation reserve on its financial performance, asset management, infrastructure backlog, as well as an estimate of the total loss of interest income. Now, I think this issue has been very comprehensively addressed through the briefings that councillors have received. But Councillor Stamoulis, I'll ask you to speak to the motion, to the amendment.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. It's not about what councillors have received, it's about what our public hear, and you get to see those reports as well when we make our decisions. So it's not just about internal silent discussion going on. That's more important to me, that we produce reports. This is the heart of financial management, so that when that report comes back, our people see what's coming out of the depreciation reserve. We all have a depreciation reserve at home, and we use that for fixing our infrastructure. In fact, I think Council's got about $2.8 billion of infrastructure, with about $82 million in the depreciation reserve. So we all have this at home, don't we, to fix the roof, if the plumbing goes, if the electrical wiring goes. Now, I can say at home, I've got $12,000 in my backlog, in my depreciation reserve, but if I run off and buy a new car, then the family needs to know that I can still attend to the problems of the roof and the electricity, and that's what a depreciation reserve's about, and that's why I'm asking these questions, so that we know and we can tell our public we are managing this project and our budget at the same time in a very efficient way, because we're taking out of the depreciation reserve and we are losing interest income as a result of that, which is going to be used for other things. And we have our internal audit and risk committee, ARIC, which I believe we should be consulting on making important decisions like this. That's the whole purpose of that committee, is to make these sorts of calls and to assist us in making these decisions. Thanks.
Is there a seconder for the amendment? Councillor Atkins.
I'll just speak very briefly. I'd like to thank the staff for the very comprehensive briefing that we had this afternoon. But I agree with Councillor Stamoulis that this is not. Of course, it's important that we are well informed when we make these decisions, but it's also important that the public understand the basis upon which we make these decisions, and that's why I'm seconding.
Okay, thank you for that. Councillor Drury.
So the public can understand, funding for Leichhardt Oval could be incorporated into the 24-25 budget that's on exhibition and brought back to the next council meeting. Report for council would include an updated long-term financial plan which would reduce surpluses in 25-26 financial year and the outer years by an estimated $300,000 to $400,000 due to reduction in interest received from the $10 million being taken from the depreciation reserve in year 2 of the plan. Council would continue to achieve significant surpluses in the outer years of the long-term financial plan, with $3.7 million in financial 27-28. That is the information that has been asked. That is the information that has been given to councillors to make a decision on this tonight, in addition to the briefing that was given to councillors today. I believe that both these amendments would not add value to the process.
Does anyone object if I treat that as one amendment? The same substantive issue that's incorporated. Any further discussion of the amendment? Councillor De Cruz.
Yeah, I think we've, in the motion we're talking, and you've spoken tonight about $50 million. So is the LPAC going to be separate from the 10 million, only 10 million allocated to the oval upgrade? So in the budget papers that come back next week, will they be separate or will there be 50 million to this new sports
I'm
precinct?
going to rule that that is a question about the primary motion. It's
Yeah.
not relevant to
Okay.
the amendment that's been
Yep.
moved by Councillor Stamoulis. Is there any further discussion of the amendment? If not, I'll put that. All those in favour of the Stamoulis-Atkins amendment? I have 5 councillors in favour. All those against? I have 8 councillors against. That has been defeated. Matt? So we'll return to the primary motion. Councillor Griffiths, did you have a further amendment?
Yeah, I just had one amendment. There's been some bold claims made tonight about Leichhardt Oval being the 8th wonder of the world, and I think I'd need to, I think, further investigate that claim. And this is a lot of money that we're talking about here. So actually, I have a quick question just for the officers, and that's I just wanted to double check that we'll basically functionally have another go at making this decision during the budget process, and we can always change any of this through that process. Is that correct?
I'll put that question to the council officers.
Apologies. Through you, Chair. If this is resolved this evening, it will be incorporated into that draft budget that is presented to Council on the 25th of June.
But Councillor Griffiths is asking, could the budget still be further amended then?
The report that goes up can be amended on the night and the budget can be adjusted on the night and adopted at that time.
Thank you for that confirmation. Now, I've missed, there was actually an additional Stamoulis amendment, and that is that the council report on how the value of the $10 million was decided upon. Now, I'm not sure how the council will report on that, given that it was a mayoral minute tabled by myself. So I know the council is very informed, but I don't know if it knows what's going on between my ears. Councillor Stamoulis, did you, sorry, is there a seconder for the amendment? Councillor De Cruz is the seconder. Councillor Stamoulis, did you wish to speak to it?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. There hasn't been much information how the figure of $10 million arises. As a statistician, it's very common for people to use 3, 7 or 10 as their favourite numbers, and they're the ones that often appear. So I'm not sure how your 10 came about, but it would be nice for councillors to know and our public to know how the 10 came about. They are funding it, and we're making that very important decision on it. So when I see a 3, 7 or 10, it's always very curious. Before we make decisions on issues like this, it would be wise for us to know what could be funded and what is best funded to achieve the result that this council wants for Leichhardt Oval. And again, I'll put this into the, when we're making important decisions like this, stripping money out of reserves, not having our ARIC committee look over it, then that leaves us in a tenuous position. We need information. Thank you.
Thank you for that. 3, 7 or 10. I feel like I'm getting my palms read here. Councillor De Cruz.
I guess I'm curious too about how the 10 million was arrived at, whether that was cherry picking certain items out of the master plan. Perhaps you can elaborate on that, Councillor.
I'll take that as a question.
To you.
Thank you. Look, we've all unanimously adopted the Leichhardt Oval Master Plan. As you know, we've been wise about it. It's modular. So we didn't say, fund us for $100 million or nothing. All of us together through our multiple briefings and deliberations said, let's look at all the different elements of how you could improve Leichhardt Oval and itemise them. So, for example, in my mind, female-friendly change rooms is the highest priority. And that's about $5 million. To replace all the concourse seating, some of which is really quite antiquated, doesn't do a lot for the corporate offer of the ground, but it improves this experience for most patrons who are coming. That's about $5 million as well. So I think you could offer less than $10 million and not really achieve anything at all. It's our premier sporting ground, and I don't think it's realistic for us to say that we want the state and federal governments to fund it, but we can't contribute at all. And I assume everyone who voted for the master plan, because it was predicated on that basis, would agree with that. So I thought $10 million was a reasonable proposal for the council to put forward, given that we know there's a lot of speculation, but if it doesn't come to any fruition now, the ground will close. So we've got to contribute something. So if someone wants to propose a lesser amount, then I'm happy to hear them speak to their amendment. Is there any further discussion of the 6th Stamoulis amendment? If not, I'll put that. All those in favour? Against? That has been defeated with Councillor Atkins against as well, so that's 9 councillors against. Okay, that's a very thorough series of amendments. Is there anyone else who wishes to amend the motion?
Yeah. So I did have an amendment on that. I think, considering I'm not too concerned about this because I know it's a lot of money, but we are going to be revisiting it in the budget cycle. But I think we should have the opportunity to have an on-site tour to check out the facilities and actually know.
Incorporated. You haven't been there before?
Not since I was a child.
Oh, come on, bro. You got to get down
You're just
there,
about
man.
to leave
It's
us.
the 8th wonder of the world. What sort of inner West councillor are you? That's just a joke.
I'm representing Ashfield as well, the home of the West Magpies, honestly.
And the West Magpies should be in the top league, in my opinion.
Mate, they are. It was a merger.
All right, I'll call the meeting to order. I'm happy to incorporate that. I agree that a tour is a good idea. Councillor Stamoulis might like to get down there. Councillor Drury.
I'd like to speak in favour of this mayoral minute, and I'd like to say that what I think this is about is council looking after our key assets. Looking after our key assets that we have been advised and has been shown are in need of renovation and upgrade. We've got a process for assessing how our assets are performing, and we know both these assets are in need of work and, while we're doing it, in need of modernisation. We've got a pretty disciplined process in terms of dealing with these things. We started off as the Inner West Council. We started work in terms of the Marrickville Library. Then we started on the Ashfield swimming pool. Both those things needed work. And now we're moving to Leichhardt and looking at that whole precinct. And I think you're right, Mayor, to look at it as a sporting precinct and look at what we can do to really give that precinct a future. And this does give it a future. This is us pitching in, showing some leadership, hoping others come along to invest in a premier precinct in the Leichhardt area. We have this depreciation allowance reserve. We've put money aside for these sorts of projects. Let's use it wisely. Let's use it on this.
Thank you for that. Any further discussion of the primary motion? Councillor De Cruz.
I will ask my question again, whether in the budgets papers that come to the next meeting, the 40 million will be separate, still allocated to the swimming pool, and 10 million to the Oval.
I'll put that question to the council officers.
Through you, Chair, there'll be 2 separate line items in the budget pack that you will receive.
I just might make one comment about the ladies' change rooms.
Can I ask, Councillor, is this your speech to the motion?
It is. As someone who's played sport all my life, it should have been obvious, but it wasn't. Someone's pointed out to me that when women are playing women, they need 2 sets of change rooms. They don't need one change room, and the men's change rooms unused. So we really need to turn those change rooms into unisex change rooms and to use both and the maximum available to any people playing the actual games at the grounds. And women's sport is often short of toilets. Oh, no, women's at intervals. There's long queues at the toilets and while the men go through quite quickly. So I think we need to actually say that the women's toilets are not separate, or change rooms are not separate. It's actually being able to use both the change rooms for the women when they're playing there. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Is there any further amendment to the motion or anyone who wishes to speak against it? Councillor Stamoulis, a seventh amendment, or are you coming out against it?
On an eighth, I think, isn't it? Anyway.
Okay, that's very time-consuming.
Yeah, look, fellow councillors, I'm very disappointed that the amendments that have been removed tonight.
Sorry, councillor, can I clarify? Because you've just identified that you were moving an eighth amendment.
No, no,
are you speaking
no,
to the motion,
no,
or are you moving an amendment?
I'll speak to the motion, Mr. Mayor,
Okay,
yeah.
please proceed.
I'm very disappointed tonight that those amendments that were removed are the ones, in fact, that go to the heart of our responsibilities as councillors, and that is about our financial oversight, financial management, and placing that on record for our community to see. So I'm concerned, and that includes taking this through our ARIC committee, which I think is an important step. Sure, there might be a delay of 4 weeks. Anyway, it'll go to the budget anyway, as Councillor Dillon mentioned. This is still coming to the budget.
Councillor Stamoulis, no, sorry, with respect, I'll call the meeting to order. Councillor Griffiths will be heard by his proper title. He's Councillor Griffiths.
Councillor Griffiths, that's right. And also on how this $10 million was decided upon and constructed, I think that's something that that is very important to know. So those key things about how councillors make decisions about projects like this and exercise our financial management and oversight of it were removed this evening. And the other one that was most disappointing.
Councillor Stamoulis, with respect, I'll call you to order. You have spoken 7 times on this item already. I'll ask you to address the substantive motion, not the amendments that you've already moved and which have been defeated.
Okay, and additionally, I would have liked to have included some community use of that oval. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Is there anyone else who would like to amend the motion or to speak against it? If not, I'll make a brief right of reply. Look, it's been very difficult securing funding for Leichhardt Oval. That's just a statement of fact. One of the reasons for that is that there's more than 10 years lapsed at one point in the New South Wales Parliament without Leichhardt Oval being raised at all. The member for Balmain did not talk about Leichhardt Oval in the Parliament for over a decade. I'm not aware whether Councillor Shetty, in her role as the member for Balmain, has taken it up. If she has mentioned it in the Parliament, it's been in passing. There's been no advocacy campaign. So it's been the council on its own. And now we're finally at a point where there's ongoing speculation that we might be able to win state and federal government funding. So I'm not sure how seriously to take criticisms from people.
Point of order, Mr. Mayor. Are you speaking to the motion?
Yes.
Doesn't sound like it to me.
I've ruled that I am. I'm not sure how seriously to take criticisms from people who've played no role in the campaign, not advocated for the ground at all, and now that we're getting close to winning the funding, wanting to make criticisms from the sideline about the funding that council might allocate. The really important thing about the Leichhardt Oval Master Plan is that we can convert the facility into a hub for women and girls sport. The West Tigers are important. You'd expect me to say that. I'm a very avid West Tigers fan, but there are only 5 out of the 120 fixtures this year, the men's NRL team. There's over 30% of the sport played at Leichhardt Oval this year will be women and girls sport. Just last Sunday, we had the Female Festival of Football. You're not going to get a more community event than that. Balmain District Football Club and Leichhardt Saints coming together to have an entire day of women and girls playing at Leichhardt Oval. And the looks on the faces of the girls as they were running out of the tunnel. Now, Councillor Stamoulis, you weren't there, but it was priceless. And that's what we're trying to achieve. So we need to have a unified voice now. I think it would be very disadvantageous to the community at this stage to have, for political purposes, undermining of the position. And so I hope that there will be unanimous support for what we have supported unanimously before, a joint funding agreement between the state, local and federal governments. But knowing that we haven't secured that funding, we've got to make a decision now. We're going to step up or not. And that's why I'm proposing the motion tonight. So I'll put that. All those in favour, please raise your hands. I believe that is carried unanimously. I hope that not every motion that's going to be carried unanimously tonight will be subject to 8 or 9 amendments. That would make for a prolonged meeting unnecessarily. So we'll move on to item 2.
Mayor, can I
motion to rescind?
Can I move a procedural motion to move item 15? I'll speak to that.
No. Well, you want to move a procedural motion that we suspend standing orders to deal with item 15 rather than item 2. Is that correct? Is there a seconder for that? I think it's fair given, look, I'll go to your colleagues first, given that they are the movers of the motion, of the rescission motion. Councillor De Cruz or Councillor Atkins, are you happy to suspend standing orders to deal with item 15? Okay.
Though I should point out that some of the people in the gallery are actually for item 2 as well. So maybe we should do 2 and then 16.
I'm not the one who's proposing it.
You can speak to that.
I'll just check with the officers. I'm not sure whether you have a right to speak to a procedural motion about suspending standing orders. I'll ask the officers about that.
No, there's no speakers to that procedural motion.
So it's moved by Councillor Griffiths, seconded by Councillor De Cruz. All those in favour? Against? Declare that carried. So we're going to deal first with item 15 on page 30. Moved by Councillor Griffiths. Do you wish to speak to it?
Yes, thanks. And first, I'll just recognise that there are people in the gallery here for other items. I've moved this forward because I think it should be dealt with quickly. We have some minor amendments, which I'll ask to be put onto a screen, an amended motion. And I'd just like to say that I congratulate the Inner West Bicycle Coalition, whose petition today has garnered almost 1,300 signatures, 1,300 people calling for safer streets for pedestrians and cyclists. We need to get cars off the road. And this means making active transport safer and faster. There needs to be a comparative advantage of cycling through the LGA compared to driving through the LGA. Children should feel safe cycling to school. Cyclists should not, in cycling lanes, should not have to be split into traffic or made to give way to cars. We shouldn't notice a marked difference in quality and abundance of cycling infrastructure when travelling between the City of Sydney and the Inner West LGAs. And what takes me aback is that we have one of the most cycling-friendly cohort of councillors ever elected to the Inner West. Councillor Stevens, a regular cyclist with Lilyfield Cycling Club. Councillor Howard, I see zipping around on a Lime bike around Marrickville. I know that Justine frequents the Cooks River cycling path, and Councillor Shetty is known to have a great cargo bike. And Councillor Drury, how could I forget with their yellow vest? And De Cruz,
I appreciate
everyone.
the lack of reference to Lycra.
But this enthusiasm, in my mind, is not echoed in our cycling infrastructure. I believe we're behind. The petition asks that the council changes gears when it comes to active transport, that we have more designs in the pipeline, and that we have new cycling paths shovel ready. This should just be the start. It's asking for a report tonight to come back in August, where we're asking council to constructively engage with this signature, which has garnered almost 1,300 signatures. So once again, congratulations to people advocating for this, and I hope over the next few months we can get a plan together to kickstart cycling in our LGA.
Is there a seconder for the motion?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to second that motion.
Councillor Stevens will second the motion. Do you wish to speak to it?
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Please proceed.
Thanks to Councillor Griffith for bringing this motion to the previous meeting and this evening. I think we're on a unity ticket on cycling. Council has an excellent strategy and an excellent action plan, but it's clear that more work needs to be done. And in fact, more work is being done. and Councillor Griffiths and myself and other councillors are in pretty regular contact with council officers and are aware of what is being done, but we do know more needs to be done. So I'm pleased to support this motion, and I think a report in August calling to address the various items listed there in point 2 of the motion would be helpful to speed things along further.
Okay, is there anyone who wishes to speak against the motion or to amend it? If not, I'll put that. All those in favour? Against? Declare that carried unanimously. We'll resume standing orders. For those of you who were here for that item, you're welcome to stick around, but it probably goes downhill from here. I don't need corrections on my own dad jokes. Okay, we'll go back to the notice of motion to rescind. Item 18, update on Parramatta Road Corridor Urban Transformation Strategy. We have 3 councillors who have moved a rescission motion, the first of which is Councillor De Cruz. Do you wish to speak to it?
Sending the PR cuts, so I'm moving the rescission motion because sending the PR cuts proposal back to the state government, who had given gateway approval to this proposal last April or May or whatever, when we sent it. Well, we sent it to them previously, and then they sent it back to us on the proviso that we were going to do the public consultation and consult government agencies. And it is unprecedented that against both policy and custom for councillors to adopt a planning proposal without a report on the number of public submissions, their source and concerns. The community participation in planning policy requires these steps, see page 32. To invite public submissions and then not even consider them before proceeding to ratify a proposal is extraordinary. The EPA Act mandates public participation. There are a number of outstanding issues reported on the agenda of a council meeting 21 May 2024 and are reproduced on today's agenda. It has received responses from state agencies which need to be resolved before they could progress. The council's planning proposal before they could progress the council's planning proposal. The major concerns raised by state agencies relate to biodiversity, flooding, drinking water capacity for additional residents, as well as traffic access. The latest from Transport for New South Wales about the land acquisition for roads and green space for the additional dwellings indicate that 2016 plans for better public and active transport are not possible. And in addition, we haven't seen anything of what our communities thought about the plan. So I recommend that we rescind last council meeting's motion and put them before you.
Okay, thanks for that. Councillor Stamos.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, often when we're focusing on debates about housing and dwelling targets and the like, we forget sometimes that our council is sitting out of the 130 councils in New South Wales that we have the 4th highest dwelling density. And in terms of the median for Sydney, we are double. At over 2,400, nearly 2,500 dwellings per square kilometre, the average in Sydney, or the median in Sydney, is about 1,200, so we're double what's in Sydney. The other thing that we forget is we have the 2nd lowest open space ratio. We have the 2nd lowest open space ratio of all 130 councils. So that really impacts on the environment, it impacts on our quality of living. And in this area here, we see the sorts of densities already that most of Sydney doesn't even have. This is quite a high density location. It has great biodiversity in that area, and residents have pointed that out to us. It's a very intact local environment. It's a great environment to be in. I've been across there several times to meet with residents and look at it myself, at their schools there. But I think one of the most important things also coming out of this is that residents are wondering how their councillor is going to represent them. Now, they've already picked out that we didn't even read their submissions and they weren't presented to councillors. That's troubling. That is troubling. We made a decision without having those submissions in our hands. I wonder what the residents are thinking when that's occurring, and when they're being troubled with great uncertainty about the future of their community. Who's making decisions about it? Not to see that their councillors on top of it is highly troubling. So I think we should take a step back, rethink this, fight for our people, or do the right thing by our communities. And I think that's important. One of those steps is to at least get these submissions sorted out and understood. Thank you.
Thanks for that. Councillor Atkins.
Thank you. At our 13th of February meeting, we resolved at item 3 that without delay, following the resolution of a number of issues outlined, any and all reports be brought back to Council for finalisation of the Parramatta Road Corridor Urban Transformation Strategy at the next possible meeting. That would include a detailed engagement outcomes report and any proposals for change to Council's draft planning proposal as a result of that engagement. Instead, as a result of Councillor Scott's sudden whim at our last meeting, we saw Labor vote to ignore residents' views and ignore our own community engagement strategy and the law, and send the planning proposal to the state government for finalisation and gazettal without Council actually having seen a final version of the proposal. Community participation in planning decisions is a requirement of the Environment Planning and Assessment Act and our own community engagement strategy. Participation does not mean give residents a chance to put in submissions and then ignore them. At our 13th of February meeting, we were given a brief preliminary engagement outcomes report and key issues in the report to Council. We have not seen a detailed engagement outcomes report, nor have we seen any proposed changes to the draft planning proposal resulting from engagement with our community. To send the proposal to government without Council itself having seen the latest version would be extraordinary.
Councillor Atkins, can I ask, as you recall, at the last meeting, we voted for an overriding position on our LEP to complete it by the end of this year, which I think you voted for. And one of the clauses of the motion was to complete the Parramatta Road rezoning proposal. So were you against that then, but for it now? Well, are you for or against that?
I am for finalising it, taking into account the engagement from our community, which we already have, which this particular resolution at the last meeting completely ignored by talking about immediately sending the planning proposal for finalisation and gazettal.
Sorry, I'm not meaning to be pedantic about it, but we've also voted on the motion to complete our LEP, which included a clause that said, I can get up on the screen if you like, it said we complete the Parramatta Road rezoning proposal. So were you
well, then they were completely at odds with each other, weren't they? Because it says
you voted for that one.
Well, perhaps at the time it was not clear to me that they did not sit properly together.
Fair enough. It had been tabled in the business papers, but fair enough. Thank you. Okay, anyone else who would like to... So all three movers of the rescission motion have spoken. Now, I'm just going to seek clarity from the council officers about the process for dealing with a rescission motion. The three speakers have spoken. Are others able to speak against the rescission, and what's the criteria for what they're able to address?
Through the chair, yes, others are able to speak on the item, just as they would other items. And I guess if they either agree with the rescission motion, they will put their case,
or... the substantive motion. It doesn't have to be about whether it should be rescinded or not. It's not like an urgency motion.
Exactly, yeah. So they would be either agreeing that the resolution from the previous meeting be rescinded, or alternatively supporting the previous decision.
Got you. Thank you very much. Councillor Griffiths.
I just had a question for Councillor Scott as the mover for the past resolution.
Well, Councillor Scott is not the mover of the motion that's before us. You are able to pose a question to any councillor at any time, but Councillor Scott has played no role in the debate so far.
Yeah, okay. Well, it's to Councillor Scott as the mover of last council meeting's resolution, which passed. Councillor Scott, can you please clarify the intent of the resolution passed last meeting? Was it intended that the PR cuts would not come back to council before being gazetted?
I'll put that question to Councillor Scott.
It is the intention of that. It was my intention in moving that motion that the planning proposal for PR cuts go to the state government for finalisation, as was adopted by the entire council in our motion to proceed with our LEP.
Okay, thank you for that. Councillor Griffiths, did you have anything else?
Yeah, I just have a question to the officers through you, Mayor.
Yep.
My first question is, was consultation on the PR cuts a condition of the gateway determination that we received?
I'll put that question to the council officers.
Through you, Mr. Chair, that's correct.
A follow-up question to the officers. So Section 3.34 of the EPA Act, Section 8, states that a failure to comply with a requirement of a determination, a gateway determination, under this section in relation to a proposed instrument does not prevent the instrument from being made once it is made. However, if community consultation is required under Schedule 1, the instrument is not able to be made unless the community has been given an opportunity to make submissions and the submissions have been considered under that schedule. So can I ask, does 3.348 of the EPA mean that the PR cuts cannot be gazetted unless we consider the submissions from the community?
I'll put that question to the council officers.
Through you, Chair, before the PR cuts can be gazetted, the outcomes of the community consultation must be considered.
I'll just speak substantively to the motion, Mayor.
Please do.
I've spoken a fair bit about the PR cuts before and my views on, I guess, how the city should be structured and where density should be located. And I'm generally supportive of the PR cuts in full. However, I felt deeply uncomfortable with the motion that was put to send this to the department. And my concern was that it would not come back to us without us actually seeing a final engagement report. You know, we've gone out, we've asked for the community's views, and then we haven't even taken them into consideration. And I think that that was the wrong thing for this council to be doing. And I do think it should be rescinded on that basis. I think we should receive the final engagement report. We should consider it, and then at a future council meeting, maybe the June council meeting on the 25th, we should consider the final engagement report and vote on it. Because I do share, I think, an opinion of other councillors that the PR cuts has been on the agenda for a long time, and it's time for the community to go forward or not go forward with it. We need to make a decision on it. It can't be lingering on council's agenda forever. But we also need to make sure that we genuinely take in the community's views, and to do that, we need to see the final engagement report.
Thanks very much for that, Councillor Griffiths. Can I put a question to the officers? Councillor Griffiths has just stated that the council has taken no interest or didn't assess at all the community's feedback through the rezoning proposal process. It's been going on for 2 years. Can I ask the officers to confirm whether any assessment has been made of community responses and engagement, and just talk through what process has occurred?
Through you, if I may, Mr. Chair, the Gateway was received from the Department of Planning in October of 2022, based on from a report that the council officers had sent to the Department of Planning, having that endorsement from council to send the proposal for Gateway. Council officers received 8 primary conditions, Gateway conditions, which had around 28 subsections that needed to be fulfilled before the planning proposal could be returned or provided back to the Department of Planning and the Minister for gazettal. As part of that process, the council officers engaged in some extensive consultation, which included the provision of a range of technical documents and maps to the community. There were also 3 quite significant town hall meetings where the community was invited to come and have explained to them the planning proposal in detail, as well as a number of pop-ups that were held where residents were able to engage directly with the council officers on specific concerns that they needed to have addressed. That information was then gathered up and was synthesised into a report that was then being worked on by the council officers prior to the next step, which would be to bring a planning proposal to council for their review. That step has not yet occurred, and that is because as part of the process of consideration of the Gateway conditions, council was also required to engage with a number of state agencies and seek referrals from them, and some of those referrals have proven quite difficult to resolve.
Thank you for that. Just for clarity, that seems like quite a detailed process. I know it's been lengthy. The suggestion's been made that it's been less than the average level of council engagement, or that no assessment was made of community concerns.
Sorry, point of order, Mayor. That's not what I said.
What was it that you said?
I said that the final engagement report has not been submitted to council, and that's just been confirmed by the officer.
I'll call the meeting to order. No, that's not what you said. You said that no consideration had been given to the community's concerns. So, with great respect, well, if I could ask you to stop interjecting, I'm able. It's not Councillor De Cruz doesn't have a monopoly on questions through the chair. I'm just trying to ask a question. Would you say it's been less than average or more than average level of engagement and consideration of community concerns overall?
Through you, Chair, the level of engagement that we had engaged through the PR cuts, I would consider was probably more than what has been done in the past, and we have been using it to demonstrate to the community the ability the council officers have to engage on some quite difficult issues and to legitimately hear from them and take their concerns on board.
Okay, thank you for that. I take that at face value. Any further discussion of the primary decision motion? Yes, Councillor Scott.
Mr. Mayor. Thank you. I'd like to speak against this rescission motion, and I would just first of all like to apologise to the members of the gallery who are there this evening. I would like to be in the chamber with you. I have COVID and I'm very sorry that I can't be there. I just want to confirm that the motion which we passed last meeting was not to adopt or endorse any particular rezoning or any particular alteration to the DCP or the LEP or any other planning instrument that applies to West Leichhardt or more broadly. What we have adopted as a council, which is in line with the motion that was adopted unanimously to finalise our LEP, was to take the work that the council has done and send it back to the state government for them to finalise. Our responsibility as the council, what we were asked to do, was to undertake a range of consultation exercises, which we faithfully undertook, and to engage in and facilitate a range of technical studies, some related to the environment, some economic, and those have all been completed. However, there are these outstanding internal state government referrals, and there is no horizon in sight for state government agencies to stop asking each other what they think before we can get some certainty for the community. Now, as a council, we've agreed unanimously many times that we have a role to play in resolving the housing supply crisis, and our council officers have significant work to do in preparing for us an LEP before the end of the year that takes into account a number of proposals around TODs and PR cuts. And that is the work that they need to be engaged in.
Chair, I'll move an extension of time, 2 minutes.
The Deputy Mayor has moved an extension of time of 2 minutes. That's seconded by Councillor D'Arienzo. All those in favour, against? Declare that carried. Please proceed.
Thank you so much. Frankly, this proposal, and I live in West Leichhardt, I've known this proposal in the book since 2016. It's taken that long, 8 years, for it to get to this stage, and we as a council have been dealing with it for 2 years, and there is no end in sight. We've done all that we can, and the community consultation, which was extensive, which I attended, will all be provided to the state government along with the technical reports, and they can resolve this. It's no longer up to our staff and our officers to keep working when it is the state government who is taking so long to provide certainty for our community. We as a council have not adopted any particular planning proposal. What we have said is, if you want us to do this, you need to talk to your own agencies internally and get it done. Now, I don't want to, having come this far, rescind this and go back again to us facilitating whether the Environment Department talks to the Planning Department. They can do that themselves. I am, like the Mayor, frankly sick of the Planning Minister and others saying it is council dragging their heels when we have done the work that they asked us to do in good faith. And it's time that we handed this bundle of work over to them and said, this is on you now. You finalise it and sort it out. We've got on board. We're negotiating in good faith on behalf of our community to do significant planning, but this part is up to you. And I do not want us to see
Councillor, your time has expired.
This process, which has taken so long.
Thanks.
Sorry, I can't see the clock.
That's okay. Thank you very much for that. I wish to speak briefly against the rescission motion as well. Look, this is a difficult situation because, in my opinion, what's going on here is a little bit of a pantomime. Rob Stokes was the planning minister in 2016 or 17 when a direction was given, which has legal status, for the rezoning of Parramatta Road. There's a number of very minor infrastructure projects along our part of the corridor that have been funded as part of that policy. Various sculptures and small little pocket parks and parklets along the corridor. That was the former government's policy. And then we didn't support it, but they came back to us and said, look, this has already been rezoned. Either you can do the public consultation or we can. But if we do, the Department of Planning, it's very cursory. They don't really engage with the community at all. And we know that from previous experience. So as a matter of principle, what we've always done is we've said, all right, well, we didn't necessarily agree with it, but we'll go out and make sure that the consultation is done thoroughly. Unfortunately for us, that means you end up copping the blame for a policy that you didn't enact, but it's already been gazetted, so it's got legal status. And so we've done that process. It's taken 2 years. I know there's a number of people here tonight who are completely opposed to the policy. It's not ours, but we've conducted the consultation, and I know that there's people who are both dissatisfied with the policy. Can I seek an extension of time? Moved by Councillor D'Arienzo, seconded by Councillor Drury. You have 2 minutes. All those in favour? Against? Declare that carried. But we've gone out and done the consultation. Our staff, it's been difficult for them. They don't enjoy doing it. It's not necessarily something that they're proposing, but they're sort of the meat and the sandwich. And at the same time, the council as a whole has moved its position on overall increases in density because everyone, including the media, have started to recognise that there is actually a housing supply crisis. And overall, the rezoning proposals that have already gone through for these areas, they're modest. Not for the people who are opposed to them. You guys hate it, I get it. But 4 to 6 stories is not high density. And so the council's been left in a position where we say we're in favour of increasing housing supply, but if we vote against even very modest increases in density, we'll look like hypocrites. And so all along until last meeting, or the meeting before, everyone's voted for it, just to progress it along, because it wasn't our policy anyway. But some people are trying to play both sides of the street and say, yeah, no, I'm against it, but I'm for it. And so that's sort of the position that we're up to. Are we going to rescind something that we've all voted for multiple times, or are we going to go forward with it? So I know that's not pretty. That's why they call it, what do they call it? Sausage making. You never want to see the process of making laws, but none of us come to it with clean hands. I think we'd all recognise that. So I'm not in support of the rescission motion. We've already voted as a group, not quite unanimously last time, but overwhelmingly in support of doing our own LEP with this rezoning being part of it. And so I'm confused as to the councillors who are now going to vote against this but voted for the previous motion. I think it's a risk for them that they're going to look like they're playing both sides. Anyone else who would like to amend the motion or to speak against it?
Can I ask Councillor Scott a question?
So you're going to put, you're one of the movers of the rescission motion, but you want to pose a question to Councillor Scott.
I think Councillor Scott misrepresented what happened.
If you would,
she has
sorry, Councillor De Cruz. If you would like to move, sorry, you do. You always do. Councillor Lockie.
Yeah, I wasn't going to speak. I just wanted to respond to a couple of those comments and just make it really clear that I'm not opposed to this proposal. I don't think I've ever been opposed to this proposal, and I support more density in this area. I would very much love to see some public transport improvements come along with it, but my basis for voting in favour of this rescission is purely about process. I think Councillor Griffiths particularly summed it up quite well in terms of being just concerned about, and I do want to commend the officers at this point as well for the really excellent community engagement process that's been undertaken. I also attended some of those sessions. They were very difficult sessions for staff, but I also think that in terms of having some tricky questions to answer, but they were really respectful. And I think that the community members, some of whom I know attended those sessions as well that are here tonight, really had an opportunity to have their concerns heard. And I know from previous experience, having now considered a number of planning proposals that come through council, that when we get that engagement report back, we often do make amendments to the original proposal in order to reflect some of the valid concerns that were raised. And where we are unable to make amendments, we do make a point of explaining to the community why that's the case. So I do think that's an important process to undertake. Notwithstanding, I appreciate the very real frustration with the delays that we've experienced from the state government agencies for this state government mandated planning proposal. I also wanted to address the support for item 49 in the last meeting for the LEP, was that while there was a reflection of finalising this proposal reflected in the principles that we were going to consult on, I certainly looked at that as being something that would be, we weren't ready to finalise it yet necessarily.
I move an extension of time of 1 minute for Councillor Lockie.
Moved by Councillor Stevens, seconded by Councillor Griffiths. All those in favour, against, declare that carried. Please proceed.
Yeah, whilst I didn't believe we were in a position to finalise that proposal yet, I certainly do believe we should be working towards that, because I do support development and the PR cuts, which, as the Mayor has pointed out, we don't have a choice but to deliver anyway. It's a state mandated proposal, and the officers have worked really hard and really conscientiously to try and incorporate that and deliver the best possible community outcome as a result, which is the other reason I'm concerned about just lobbing it to the state government to resolve now, because, you know, in my experience, it's not generally the state who delivers the best outcomes for our local community. And similarly with item 49, one of the other points we all voted to support was that we would incorporate, I think it was the state patent book, which doesn't exist yet. But certainly the assumption I would assume, I'm guessing, is that we will have something to consider over the time between now and December in order to, when that comes back to us to make a decision, that we can decide whether or not that will be a principle that will carry through into the master plan or not. So, yeah.
Thanks, Councillor Lockie. Is there anyone else who would like to amend the motion or to speak against it? If not, I'll go to Councillor De Cruz for her right of reply.
Okay, I think Councillor Scott, in her addressing the public, was quite insulting in that they had taken the time to make submissions, and council doesn't seem to need to feel the need to actually consider those submissions. I know that it went to plan.
De Cruz, sorry, I'll call the meeting to order. I'm going to ask you to withdraw that remark. I don't think any fair observer could suggest that Councillor Scott had been insulting to the public in her remarks. It may well be, sorry, if I can ask you to desist from interjecting as well. It may well be that members of the public would disagree with her remarks, but I don't believe that she was insulting in any way towards members of the public. I'll ask you to withdraw that.
Okay, if you don't feel that ignoring that feeling that there's no need to have a community consultation report and that is a state agency matter.
Hold on, sorry. Can I seek clarification? I'll call the meeting to order. I'm sorry to delay everything like this, but you said okay at the start, so is that withdrawn?
The insult that you're calling an insult.
Your comment that it was Councillor Scott had insulted the public, is that withdrawn?
Well, let me just clarify which under the sorry, I will actually point you to an order in the minutes where I'm entitled to clarify what I was meaning by that phrase. And I have a right to clarify that.
No.
Okay, I'll withdraw it. Fine. Okay.
Please proceed.
My concern is that we did not consider the community engagement, which it was quite extensive, and that report did not come to council, and we did not bother to look at it because obviously it hasn't come to us. So after doing all this wonderful community engagement, we said to our residents and our community, we don't care what you said. And now we're saying that all we care about is what the state agencies say and that the state government can sort that out. Well, I think that's really disappointing and it's contrary to the legislation. And I too commend Councillor Griffiths for his detail on the legislation, which I wasn't quite so fair with. So I think it is really disappointing that what has happened now is that we have not taken into consideration the community consultation. And when we approved it to go to Gateway, to the state government, there was a concern that it went to the planning panel. They sent us advice and there was no consultation to the community until after the Gateway. And then basically now we're ignoring the Gateway. No, I've got 30 seconds to go. So we are totally ignoring our community and not doing any consultation, which was a requirement when it came back to us from the state government.
Councillor De Cruz has just stated that we are totally ignoring our community and have not done any consultation. I'm going to, given I think we've resolved that issue, notwithstanding the dispute about the substantive motion. I don't think that's an accurate description. The officers have explained the engagement that they've done. With respect, I'm going to ask Councillor De Cruz to withdraw that accusation.
Sorry, has there been an engagement report? Has there been a report on the community engagement?
Sorry, Councillor De Cruz, I think it's absolutely clear what I've asked you to withdraw. I'll ask you again.
Sorry, you're asking me to withdraw that we have received a report.
No, that's not the
what have we received?
That's not
What are you asking me to withdraw?
With great respect, Councillor De Cruz, I'm going to warn you for interjecting. I'm asking you to withdraw the remarks that you just made, which I articulated.
Sorry, Councillor Byrne, can you turn your microphone on?
It's on. I'm going to ask again that you withdraw those remarks. I don't think there's anyone in the chamber who agrees with those statements. They're insulting to the council officers. I'll ask again, with respect, that you withdraw them.
I think if we actually read the report which came to council last meeting, it actually said...
Sorry, Councillor De Cruz, it's not an opportunity to make another speech. I'm going to regretfully issue you a warning about your refusal to withdraw the remarks. The issue has been addressed at length. You've stated that there's been no consultation done. That's not true. I'll ask you again to withdraw the remarks.
Let me clarify, there's no consultation engagement report come back to councillors.
Thank you for your clarification. Just want to make sure that everything's above board and we're not insulting the staff here. It's easy to do. That's been clarified, so I'll accept that. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak to the motion? Oh, sorry, we've had the right of reply. I'll now put the rescission motion. All those in favour of rescinding the Parramatta Road rezoning, please raise your hands. That's 5 against and 5 people in the gallery. All those in favour, all those against. That has been defeated, 8 votes to 5. That matter is concluded.
8 votes?
Sorry, forgive me, I've got it wrong. I'll recommit the vote. I'll put that vote again. All those in favour of the rescission motion, please raise your hands. You guys don't get a vote. You can run for council though. Yeah, and you can run for council if you'd like. I think you should. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's 5 votes against. 4. 5 votes for. All those against. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 against. Everyone happy with that? That has been defeated. We'll move to the next item. Notice of motion, Inner West Council Rozelle Interchange Committee. Councillor Stamoulis.
We got, I think, almost 3/4 of the way through this discussion of that before the fire alarm went off at the last meeting.
I don't think anyone needs to hear your speech again if you want to withhold it.
Look, I'm happy if councillors are happy that they've heard.
Okay, that's moved. Councillor Stamoulis is withholding his right to speak. Is there a seconder for the motion? If not, that will lapse. Councillor Atkins, do you wish to speak to it?
No.
Okay. So that's been seconded by Councillor Atkins. I'll speak briefly against it. Look, I appreciate Councillor Stamoulis's interest in the issue. I think it's fair to say that he's been largely absent from the public debate about the Rozelle interchange. The impacts have been huge. I've put a lot of time into it personally because I take my responsibilities to my local ward constituents very seriously. So I've put probably more time into advocating for mitigations on the Rozelle interchange over the last 6 months than any other issue because the problem's been so big. I haven't had any correspondence or interaction with Councillor Stamoulis about it. He hasn't called me to discuss it. It is true that at the December meeting that I convened and which I asked Howard Collins to attend, which was a difficult meeting, people were really angry, rightfully so. And I chaired that meeting, brought it together. There were several hundred people who attended and I said, let's draw on local people who have knowledge and expertise about traffic management, about engineering, about infrastructure and construction to analyse what's going on and to make sure that there's scrutiny of Transport for New South Wales. Wasn't an easy thing to do because, as Councillor Stamoulis will be well aware, the New South Wales government is a newly elected Labor government. So it's never easy when you're the Labor mayor of the local council to advocate strongly and publicly on behalf of the community against the government. I don't think it's all their fault. I think the previous government deserves the blame. But I did that because my principle is when you're the mayor, you stand up for the local community. You put party politics second, third, a long way distant to the community interest. And that the committee that I brought together, it's not an official committee of council. I didn't want to create it that way because I thought that would be very bureaucratic and slow moving. We've met twice in the first 6 months, and we will meet more frequently subsequently. I'm sure Councillor Stamoulis would like to dictate the terms of reference for the committee, but essentially the purpose of it is to provide informal advice to me as Mayor and to the council about whether Transport for New South Wales need to be held to account on specific mitigations that they've proposed. So that's, I'll just seek an extension of time. Moved by Councillor D'Arienzo, seconded by Councillor Stevens. All those in favour? Against? Declare that carried. So that's how it's been operating. Because it hasn't been an official committee of council, I have asked the council officers to pay a bit more attention to convening the meetings more frequently. And I'm sure they can address questions about that if Councillor Stamoulis has them. It's a little bit galling, having put so much time and effort into mobilising the community to protest what's been happening to us, to have Councillor Stamoulis raise these issues when he hasn't discussed it with me at all and has had no positive engagement. But I want the council to know that if anyone wishes to discuss these issues with me, including any Balmain Ward councillor, very happy to do so at any time. So I'll speak against the motion. Is there anyone who wishes to speak for the motion or to amend it? No? Councillor Stamoulis?
Yeah, thank you.
Can I speak against the motion as well, Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Councillor Stevens.
It's really just a round process. I think it would be helpful if councillors worked together on issues like this, rather than seeking to use the chamber to make points that might assist in particular campaigning contexts. It is, I think, to use the word of the Mayor, galling when we are all effectively on the same side on this. I think it would be helpful perhaps for councillors to put in a call to other councillors rather than a grandstanding.
Thank you for that. Councillor Stamoulis?
Mr. Mayor, I have been very active on the Rozelle Interchange, certainly have been. And this item, notice of motion, is in fact a very formal action on that. And I'd hope councillors would take its intent without your attacks on me personally about this, raising this notice of motion, and from Councillor Stevens, both offended that this has appeared in council when this is a major issue affecting our public. You're both offended that I've raised this on council. Now, it's important when you announce in front of 300, 350 people at a public meeting that you're going to set up a committee, that you carry that through, and you do that. You've only had one meeting, not two, only one. So you're incorrect, Mr. Mayor.
Sorry,
and it's important when we set up our committees.
Sorry, I'll call you to order. Look, you're grandstanding, that's fine, and I want to let you conclude your remarks, but the committee has met twice.
Yep.
The first meeting was with Transport for New South Wales. I arranged the same briefing for the committee that I had received as Mayor. I arranged it through Howard Collins, the Coordinator General of Transport for New South Wales. That was the first meeting of the committee, and the committee has met subsequently in my office with myself.
Well, that's
so
not what they're advising.
I'm not going to ask you to withdraw it, but I'm just correcting the record.
It's not what they're advising me, Mr. Mayor. And similarly, the councillors, for an issue of prime importance, it's on statewide news. It's on every radio.
You haven't been.
Every radio. You can't get off the news and the media.
Well, that's important to stand up for the community, isn't it?
Gee whiz, your face is there all day long. I'll tell you what, there's a job for you.
It's important to stand up for the community on these issues.
Well, you can't get your face off, but you can hand your other councillors.
Sorry.
Point of order.
I withdraw my remarks.
Yeah.
I don't resolve from being a high-profile and effective advocate on this issue.
You're a media
Councillor
star.
Stamoulis has acknowledged that that's important. Please proceed.
And it's important to councillors that we know these issues are being challenged. It is the most significant issue, one of the most significant in the municipality. We need to know that these forums are set up. We need to know what the terms of reference are. We need to get some feedback from them, and we've received nothing at all. We've received nothing at all, Mr. Mayor, but you announced in front of 350 people you were going to do something, and it appears as though you have not. and you certainly have not informed your councillors about it. Thank you.
Okay, I'll put that to a vote. All those in favour, please raise your hands. Thank you for that, Councillor Lockie. All those against, please raise your hands. That has been defeated. Next item, Rozelle Parklands Masterplan funding.
Fellow councillors, I think we covered this as an amendment to a mayoral minute, was it? I think at a previous meeting. So if we're happy, if we can receive confirmation from the Manager of Governance, I don't think we need to discuss this.
I don't believe that that has been resolved by the council. The motion is that council reserve the $20 million funding envelope received from the Minister for Transport until the Rozelle. Oh, okay, that's the amendment that I agreed to.
Yep.
I thought you were trying to angle to make sure that no funding was spent outside the park.
No,
I know you are. Okay, we'll move on. Councillor Stamos, is that a busy night tonight?
Yeah. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Notice of motion, use of aliases on Facebook by councillors. Big issues. Please proceed.
Yeah. Fellow councillors, over recent years, you're aware that there's been a lot of...
I'll call the meeting to order. I'll ask that Councillor Stamos be heard in silence.
Fellow councillors, over recent years, there's been a lot of effort to improve social media, commentary on it, the way that it's administered, and all sorts of issues have occurred, and they've been very high profile in the US, UK, and even here in Australia, as we well know. One particular issue I think that's very, very important for councillors is that I thought we could take a leading step amongst the councils in Australia or New South Wales by considering putting into our social media policy that when we're talking to our residents or putting up items on community pages as a councillor and speaking about local community issues, we always make sure we do it via our name rather than aliases. And in particular, those councillors who administer Facebook pages that aren't their own, because you always have your own name on your councillor page, but if you're administering community pages, that you do that via your own name, because you have special powers on a community page. You can delete comments, you can delete commentary, you can delete an issue, you can admit members, you can not admit other members. And that's a very, very sensitive role for me, for a councillor to play when they're administering a Facebook page, a very sensitive role. And when that's done, the public needs to know that what the councillor's name is. In fact, I suppose in essence it would be nice for the councillors, the public to know all the names, I suppose, when that sort of role's happening. But look, we won't go there. This is more about councillors' role. So I'm simply saying, let's consider that for amendment to our social policy when we next address that.
Can I ask if there's a seconder for the motion? Councillor De Cruz.
Yeah, I'll second it.
Well, that involve a change of behaviour.
No, well, I was just going.
Administrator of the Inner West Council Lodge.
I was just going to point out that, contrary to popular belief,
I'll call the meeting to order. No, I'll call the meeting to order. I'll withdraw my remarks.
Yeah, you should.
That is my understanding. But I'll withdraw my
No,
remarks.
it's not your. I need to clarify that.
Okay. Sorry, no, you don't need to.
May I speak
I'm
as
withdrawing the
seconder?
accusation.
Okay.
No, I'll call the meeting to order. Sorry,
Right.
Councillor De Cruz.
Thank
Don't mind for a moment. I'll call the meeting to order. Councillor De Cruz is able to speak to the motion on councillors revealing their aliases.
Thank you, Mayor. I've been torn by this motion because I found it was quite an odd one, but you have actually just reminded the chamber of the very issue that makes me feel that it should be important. Monica Wegman and myself are separate people, and we are not having one and the same alias. Monica Wegman is the administrator of Inner West Watch. I'm just moderator, and I choose not to moderate at all. And so I think if you want to choose Inner West Watch there are legitimate reasons to use an alias. Someone pointed out to me that people may be escaping from domestic violence or in hiding or whatever, and they have to go on Facebook, I guess. So they may choose to use an alias in those conditions, but I think it is inappropriate for councillors to hide behind an alias on Facebook. So I commend this policy for councillors to just consider when doing it. I mean, I think it'd be quite difficult to find out whether someone is hiding behind an alias, and it's the subject of speculation. But I think it may be worth incorporating it in our policy. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor De Cruz. Is there anyone wishing to speak against the motion? Councillor Howard.
I guess I just have two questions for Councillor Stamoulis, if that's okay. So, if just to be really honest, I've been really grappling to try to understand the basis of this motion. To be honest, so my first question, I guess, is just like I'm understanding the logic of this to be that the use of aliases on Facebook pages when acting as administrators on Facebook pages might bring council into disrepute. And you mentioned in your comments, that there's an immense power with being a moderator on one of these groups, including being able to moderate comments, also, admitting members, etc. There's a curation that happens in that role. So given your logic that this might bring council into disrepute, do you think it's appropriate that councillors be the administrators of community Facebook pages at all?
I didn't say I was going to bring council into disrepute. I didn't use those words at any stage.
It says that in your background of your motion, does it not?
Yeah, but I thought you meant what I was saying just now. But what councillors choose to do is what you as a councillor decide upon, right? But the way that you do it is very, very important. And therefore, I would like anyone to know whether I communicate on the Leichhardt page, the Balmain, or the Stanmore page, that Councillor Stamoulis or John Stamoulis, whatever they want to call me, has made a comment. And they know they're speaking to a councillor. I don't want to be in a position that I think I would want to administer I suppose by virtue that I've got my own Facebook page, I suppose I have that power. I try to resolve from that. So I think by virtue of the fact that councillors manage their own Facebook page, they're doing that administration anyway, but they do it under their own name, which I think is very important. You do it. I think you've got a Facebook page, other councillors do it that I'm aware of. And we do that very judiciously, very carefully, so that we allow full comment and full commentary. So if you can do it on your own page, then maybe by corollary you can do it on other pages. But if you have an alternative view, yeah, very, very happy to hear it. Yeah.
I guess my question is there are strong, robust conversations that happen online and in community groups, and there are community groups where there are a lot of statements that are very critical of council. And if you're a moderator of that group, you have the power to either approve those messages or to hide or to delete those messages. I mean, the logic of your motion would extend to that, isn't it? That person may actually bear a responsibility for bringing council into disrepute if they approve that message.
I think it's more. I think most Facebook pages that are community groups have 3 or 4. I think I've even seen up to 6 moderators on 1 or 2 of them. So I think you generally consult amongst the moderators. I think that's generally the process. I don't do it because I'm not on. Apart from my own page, I don't do it. But I'm assuming for those that are on those pages where there's multiple administrators, you generally would consult with each other. That'd be my guess. Is that correct?
I'm not a moderator of community Facebook page. Yeah.
Okay. But if other councillors...
Can I clarify if there are any other questions or
I have
speakers
one more
against?
question, sorry.
Thank you.
And then I'll just quickly address the motion very quickly, sorry. But it just seems to me that the issue you're getting to, if I can just be correct here, if you could correct me, is that it's to do with the engagement on the community Facebook pages and the power that comes in that. That's the problem that you're trying to address. Is that it?
No. My issue here is that I want to know. I would like to send a message that when our public are receiving comments, or when they that they know they're always dealing with the council. When we comment on community pages, it's John Stamoulis or Councillor John Stamoulis, whichever term I wish to use, people know that's the case. I want them to know that if I'm managing the Balmain page, which I don't do, that I'm one of the administrators of that page, that a councillor is administrating that page. I think it's a good policy. I think it's a good policy to have, and there's many other policies that we see in community life that would say, yes, I think when your politicians, MPs, when your councillors, senators are taking active roles in debate and that sort of thing, you want to know you're talking to them. Of course, this wouldn't apply if you're on the AFL page, for instance, and you had your own footy name. That doesn't apply there. You'd go on that page and do. But on community things, when we're talking about community debate, people want to know who they're interacting with, in particular when it's a councillor. And we know other people use aliases. We see that all the time. But for councillors, I think this would be a leading policy. Yeah.
Yeah, okay, thank you. I'll just address the motion. So thank you, Councillor Stamoulis. Look, I think I don't support this motion, and I'll explain why in a moment, but I think there might be some agreement that actually the issue that we need to solve is councillors, even if they're just using the name but without prefacing that by noting that they're a councillor, that there may be a conflict of interest in that. There may be an issue there. If you are managing and moderating comments on a Facebook page that could largely be critical of council, maybe that's the issue that we need to be addressing. Look, I think we have a robust social media policy, and Councillor Stamoulis has had many, many months to participate in that process. I think it took us almost a year to work through that process, and I think that would have been the proper time to bring up some of these concerns. So I'll be voting against this motion.
Thank you. Councillor Stevens.
Deputy Mayor, yes, I've got a question for Councillor Stamoulis, and then I'd like to speak briefly against the motion as well. Councillor Stamoulis, given the point that you're making with this motion, do you think that family members or other associates of councillors should declare their relationship with the councillor when posting councillor or reposting or resharing councillor Facebook posts?
Can I just have a quick look through the motion? I don't even believe that I addressed that, Councillor Stevens, at all.
Well, it's relevant because it goes to declaring the identity of posts.
No, I don't think I even mentioned that at all in the motion. It's about councillors only. Thanks.
Okay, so you don't have a view about that. Very good. Can I speak against this motion? I've been looking again during the debate at the actual social media policy that council has adopted, and I would note that that policy provides that councillors shall conduct themselves in their use of social media in a way that upholds the values and reputation of council consistent with the model code of conduct and other policies. And then if you cross-refer to the model code of conduct, I think it adequately covers this kind of behaviour. I think this is overly complicating an issue which is not particularly complicated, and I think we can trust councillors. I'm not aware of any councillor that adopts this practice in our caucus at all. I just don't think that this is a problem that needs specific addressing in the way that Councillor Stamoulis has proposed, so I oppose the motion.
Thank you. Are there any further speakers against the motion or
Madam
questions?
Chair,
Councillor Scott.
Madam Acting Chair, thank you. I have a question for Councillor Stamoulis as well. Like many other councillors in this chamber, I have been really curious as to what this motion is about. And I would like to ask Councillor Stamoulis very directly whether he thinks that there are any councillors in this council who are operating under an alias, and if that is what he is trying to address with his motion.
Councillor Stamoulis, would you like to answer the question?
What was the question?
Councillor Scott, would you mind repeating the question, please? And Councillor Stamoulis might listen more closely.
Thank you. I thought he took a very keen interest in this. Perhaps it was a whim. I'm just asking Councillor Stamoulis, we've all been very curious about what this motion is actually about and what problem you believe you're trying to solve. I'd like to ask you very directly, Councillor Stamoulis, whether you think there is any councillor in this council who is operating under an alias, and if that is the problem that you are trying to solve.
I don't. Sorry, is this giving feedback?
No.
No, I don't know
No,
if any. I wouldn't know if any councillor was using aliases.
Thank you, Councillor Stamoulis.
So if I might then, what is this about then? What is the problem you're trying to solve? If you don't believe or understand that there is a problem, why are you doing this?
Councillor Stamoulis, would you like to answer the question?
Can you be more specific with your
I think the question
please?
was quite specific,
Sorry,
Councillor
if
Stamoulis.
more specific, then why are you moving this motion?
Said to you, there's been major concerns about social media, the way that it operates. I think it's the sort of thing that appears at least once a week in the media, as far as I'm aware, and that there's concerns about the way that it's done. I would like to see our council take a leading position on the way that our councillors communicate with our community, administer Facebook pages, that is their comments, their thoughts, whether they're included or deleted off pages, and that I would like to take a leading role that when we do that, our name is there. Is there a problem with that, Councillor Scott?
Thank you, Councillor Stamoulis. All right, if there are no further speakers to this motion, I will go to Councillor Stamoulis if he would like to provide a right of reply.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Smith. Look, I take the point of Councillor Howard. I had the opportunity of doing this some months ago when the social media policy was prepared and drafted and then approved. But of course, the idea about policy is always changes. This is saying we move forward, and I'm saying consider the following amendments when this policy is next scheduled for review. That's the whole point of it. Our policy changes all the time. Law changes all the time. We're not back in the 1850s or 1920s, and in fact, we're not even in 2023 anymore. We're in 2024. So I'm saying that I've discovered a new way that we can make this policy more effective, more robust, more open and transparent to our people. And I think aliases, I'm suggesting here that the use of aliases by councillors, stepping back from that and say we will use our names in all communication and all discussion, is a very positive and robust thing for an elected body to do. That's simply it, and it's forward-thinking policy and very positive policy, and I think our community would value it greatly when they're interacting with councillors. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll put this to a vote. All in favour of the motion. We have Councillors De Cruz, Atkins, Stamoulis and Lockie. All against. That is defeated. We will go to the next motion from Councillor Stamoulis, format of council media releases.
Yes, fellow councillors, there's been a departure from the standard of our media releases, the way that we present our media releases this year. And it's only happened this year, and it's very different to what other councillors do. That is, we highlight, as you can see in the example there on the page, in front of you on the agenda, we highlight it's a media release from Inner West Mayor Darcy Byrne. And that's how we've departed from what we've been doing many, many years in the past to introducing this new process. So the first thing I might do is pose a question to the relevant officer as to why we made the departure this year in 2024 and why we've made such a departure on the bannering of our media release when no other council is doing this. No other council. So that's the question.
I'll direct that to the officers.
Thank you, Chair. I'd note that the comment that is in the officer's comment that says that council's media policy and social media policy for councillors, specifically the process of approvals for council media releases, has not changed or be amended. All communication material pertaining directly to the Mayor using quotes or images, including but not limited to media releases for the council page, are approved by the Mayor prior to publication. This process is strictly adhered to and has not changed. Neither policy that council has adopted outlines an established format or presentation as this motion alludes to. Additionally, in accordance with the Local Government Act 1993, the role of the Mayor is to be the principal member and spokesperson for the governing body, including representing the views of Council as to its local priorities.
Yeah, I hadn't finished speaking.
All right, Councillor Stumps, I'll ask you to conclude your initial remarks before you ask any further questions.
Thank you. No, it's very clear if you look at the presentation of our media releases prior to this year, 2024, it's never included media release Inner West Mayor Darcy Byrne. The reason that all councils do exclude that type of bannering, the reason that they do that is that media releases are from your council. They are from your council. Now, the Mayor, of course, is the spokesperson and will be quoted a number of times through that media release. No problem with that. I think that's pretty standard process. But the bannering of those media releases is a direct change this year, a very direct change this year. No other council has made such a direct change this year to highlight that it's a media release from the Mayor. The public are saying to me these are media releases from the Mayor, not media releases from council. So it sends that message as well. Thank you.
Is there a seconder for Councillor Stamoulis's motion? If not, that motion will lapse. And that motion has lapsed. We'll move on to, apologies, Councillor Drury. We will move on to Councillor Stamoulis's next motion, item 7, unoccupied dwellings and the housing crisis. Councillor Stamoulis. Councillor, I'd ask you to put your microphone on.
Thank you. Councillors, in the middle of a housing crisis, we're seeing two dynamics happening at the moment. The first is that the proportion of unoccupied dwellings is rising in the middle of a housing crisis, and the proportion of public housing is falling. Now, I simply don't understand those two numbers in the middle of a housing crisis. You're letting your public housing fall, your public housing stock fall down to about 3% now in New South Wales, and you're letting your unoccupied dwellings increase. And there seems to be no focus on either of those being addressed. And I think it's time that they need to be addressed. We're taking on a housing target. We're taking on a housing target of 7,800 dwellings and accepting that there's going to be a proportion of those that are going to be vacant. I don't see that as tenable when you're increasing densities, you're trying to increase housing supply, and I suppose if we're not going to address unoccupied housing in any way, then we accept that a proportion of those are going to be built and remain vacant for some time. Now, we know that the majority of unoccupied dwellings are legitimate. There's a reason you're on holidays, you're off for work somewhere, your house is being renovated, whatever it might be. The vast majority, of course, fall into that. But we need to understand that percentage of stock, which I might term as lazy stock, that simply just does not get into the rental market or the buyer's market, whichever one it might be. We need to understand those, and we need to advocate to the state government that work needs to be done there, and we need to, if possible, collaborate with other councils to find out how best to manage this situation to get them back in the market again. Thanks.
Is there a seconder for this motion? Seconded, Councillor Griffiths. Would you like to speak to it? I will speak against this motion. I understand that there are some people who are engaged in the debate about the housing supply crisis who seem to think, as Councillor Stamoulis apparently does, that the solution lies in peering through every window and auditing every home and trying to determine if it's vacant and why it's vacant and how long it's been vacant, and that there are people like Max Chandler-Mather and the Greens who throw figures around about the number of vacant homes in Australia, which, to say the least, are highly dubious and highly questionable. And let's be very clear when we're talking about those people, and I'm not necessarily ascribing motivations to Councillor Stamoulis, but for some of those people, this debate and this rabbit hole about unoccupied and vacant homes is actually just about distracting from their true motivation, which is to oppose new housing and developments in their communities. But if we are really serious about tackling the housing supply crisis and addressing housing affordability, The fix is not in hunting down, as Councillor Stamoulis himself just said, a comparatively tiny number of existing dwellings that may be unoccupied. There is exceptionally widespread agreement and consensus from experts and stakeholders in this space, whether it's the Productivity Commission, whether it's the Grattan Institute, a highly respected think tank, or whether it's our good friends at Shelter New South Wales who addressed our meeting just a couple of months ago, and respected community housing providers like St George Community Housing, who I think we can agree are hardly people you would say are in the pockets of developers. They agree that the best and most constructive thing that governments can be doing to address the housing supply crisis is to build more homes, is to build more supply. And that is a mix of housing types, it's a mix of density, it's a mix of affordable housing, public housing, build to rent, and private market housing. And that is what our council is focused on. That's why we've written to the Housing Minister. That's why we've written to faith-based organisations that own land and community housing providers. We've conducted a council audit of land. And all of the feedback from those experts, I just request a quick 1 minute of extension.
Oh, I'll move an extension of time. 1 minute.
Moved, Councillor D'Arienzo, seconded Councillor Scott. All in favour, against, declare that carried. What this council is focused on is what all the experts, including at our very recent Housing Affordability and Renters' Rights Summit, have told us that we should be focused on. I would also note that Councillor Stamoulis has already brought several motions on this topic in this term of council, and as a result, Inner West Council has already written to the Minister requesting data on unoccupied dwellings. We've already had council staff prepare and table a report on the impact of Airbnb and short-term rental accommodation on unoccupied dwellings in the LGA. And it's my strong view, Councillor Stamoulis, that we can't afford distraction from that core business and that core responsibility, because every day that we delay, the housing crisis escalates and worsens. So rather than rehashing work that staff have already done, I would prefer that we had council focused 100% on the big projects that we've already got on the table to build more supply for those who need it and actually make a difference in this crisis rather than going down a rabbit hole. And I will flag that I have a foreshadowed motion, which I will speak to should this motion fail to pass. Thank you. Is there any further speakers against this motion?
Chair?
Councillor Griffiths.
Can I just ask, through you to the officers, can we just clarify whether the points in this motion have already previously been actioned, particularly point 1?
I'll direct that question to the officers.
Through you, Chair, I apologise that I have to take that on notice.
There are no further speakers. I'll go to Councillor Stamoulis for a right of reply.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. I think that the housing crisis needs to be looked at laterally. It's not one single issue that's going to resolve it. Now, we have our supply targets. I think the 7,800 that's been announced, we have that. So we're looking at the increase in supply there. I'm suggesting that we also need to look at public housing, which is something you didn't refer to as to why that might be decreasing and falling. And to me, that's a major issue. As someone who grew up in public housing, which I don't think my fellow councillors did, it's to see that go down from 5% to 3% is horrifying, because it's a part of the structure of a good, solid housing market. And if you lose that, you're pushing those people into unaffordable consequences. The third thing is, that's the second thing. The third thing is that if you've got stock there sitting there available right now, let's just say it was 10% of those unoccupied dwellings were lazy stock. You've got 800 dwellings ready on your market right now, ready to start running with. It's not saying you don't need new supply. I don't think that inference was made anywhere and has not been made by anyone. What I'm saying is you've got ready stock there available. Any housing that you're waiting to be built, you're waiting a long time for those. You may have 800, you may have 1,600. We don't know if we don't find out. And they are very, very important numbers in a tight, unaffordable housing crisis. They are very, very important numbers to find out how we can best address the immediate concerns, particularly if the housing stock is sitting there. Thank you.
You can rest assured, Councillor Stamoulis, we are doing everything we can to provide more housing supply as quickly as possible.
Point of order, Chair. I'm just wondering if your foreshadowed motion should be presented before this is voted on. Put on screen.
seek advice from the governance officers on that.
I believe the debate has been finalised.
The foreshadowed motion will only be voted on if the primary motion is lost.
Yeah.
I'm happy to have it displayed on the screen if that's... Well, we have to vote against the item for the foreshadowed motion to be considered. It's on the screen now. So we will vote on Councillor Stamoulis's motion. All in favour? We have Councillors De Cruz, Atkins, Griffiths, Stamoulis, Lockie. All against? I declare that defeated, in which case we will now consider the foreshadowed motion, which is on the screen, moved by me. I don't need to speak to it again. Is there a seconder for the foreshadowed motion? Seconded, Councillor Drury. Would you like to speak to it? Are there any speakers against the foreshadowed motion? Councillor Stamoulis.
Councillor Smith, you went into quite a detailed discussion about your concerns about requesting information on unoccupied dwellings peering into people's backyards, and yet you're going into unoccupied dwellings, Airbnb, short-term rental, and you're sort of conflicting with earlier comments that you made.
No, I don't believe I am. As a point one actually addresses a previous motion that you've moved, Councillor Stamoulis, which requested that we write to the Minister for Housing requesting this information. So I'm noting that we've done that. And point two notes that the New South Wales Government is currently undertaking a review into the impacts of short-term rental accommodation on unoccupied dwellings. And I'm suggesting that we look forward to receiving and reviewing those recommendations from the work that they are doing. Are there any further speakers against this motion? If not, I'll put it to a vote. All in favour? Against? Declare that carried unanimously. We move on to item 8, demerger of Inner West Council. Councillor Stamoulis.
Busy boy.
Thank you, councillors. I'd like to note that I'm removing the second sentence out of point number 2 as an amendment or a change to that motion.
So you would like to delete
Yes.
all 7 Green and Independent councillors?
That's right. Yeah, thank you. Councillors, I've been voting ever since 1978, and I've never seen a vote of the people overturned before in that time. And I never thought that it would occur here in the Inner West, one of the most progressive, politically aware communities who take their vote very, very seriously. I never thought that would occur. And I never thought I'd see a process where a vote of the people would have to go through a panel of 4 people and a minister's approval. That doesn't occur when we do polls, referendums, elections in this nation. I've never seen that process before. And if any councillors are aware of that, love to hear your opinions.
Marriage equality.
Went through?
We had a plebiscite for marriage equality when ministers had to make a decision about
I'll call
whether
the
or not
meeting
our
to
marriage
order.
would be.
Continue, Councillor Stamoulis.
And similarly, every poll or every election that we ever have in this nation involves very, very significant cost and change. We're all aware of that. Sometimes at the federal level, it's billions of dollars of change in budget or costs or whatever, and we vote for that. We vote for that, just like when we voted for our poll, we had the yes-no case that told our people what the costs would be on them, where each of the communities, Ashfield, Leichhardt and Marrickville, were given information of their rate increase and the dollar value change, and they voted still 63% to demerge. And in fact, all 5 wards voted to demerge, all 21 suburbs, and I would say basically every street voted to demerge. So it was across the board. It wasn't any one particular section of the
Councillor Stamoulis, your time has expired unless someone moves an extension. Moved by Councillor Atkins of how long?
2 minutes.
Seconded by Councillor De Cruz, all in favour, against, declare that carried.
Thank you. Oh, it's carried.
You've got 2 minutes.
Thank you. Many of our residents still ask to this very day why our council put a merger proposal forward in 2016 when 100 councils in New South Wales did not do so. And in fact, we were the only inner city councils that put forward a merger proposal. And that is another question and dilemma for our people. So, and in fact, our mayor was the only mayor in New South Wales of 147 mayors at the time who put forward 2 proposals for merger. The Leichhardt councillors might remember Leichhardt, Canada Bay, Ashfield. That failed. I don't think there was much response. And then finally Leichhardt, Marrickville and Ashfield. So we had the only mayor that I'm aware of that put 2 merger proposals forward. We're now into the 8th year of the merger, and the Boundaries Commission have recently said we're running constant deficits, no savings, cost base is 27% higher, and there's no economies of scale. So it's basically not a merger that's working at this present point. In 2022, Council advised the community that it had submitted a business case. But this year, the Boundaries Commission clearly stated Council did not submit the required documents for them to make a proper decision. And that's important to have on record, I think. I think the statements that I've put here are clear. They're on record. And similarly, our community are going to ask, why couldn't a big council like the Inner West win this? There was community support. The policy had been abandoned. It had been disparaged by every politician that you can think of, and we could not win this.
Councillor Stamoulis, your time has expired. Is there a seconder for this motion? Seconded by Councillor De Cruz. Would you like to speak to it?
Only to say briefly that I think that us ignoring the result of the poll in December 2021 is actually, it's akin to a government being elected out of office and refusing to go. And I think that's what's happened here, that the poll is what our community wanted, and yet we couldn't actually, I mean, if we were unable to do it as an amalgamated council, then maybe we should have gone outside for a different proposal. But I think the proposal that was put to the Boundaries Commission was ridiculous in the face of academic evidence that says that the basically broader studies which say there's no economies of scale, and within the Inner West Council it has been shown, and I think FOGO was the worst demonstration of it still, that that the amalgamation has not worked, because it's the scale in which projects have to be done that no one can handle. So I second this motion.
Thank you, Councillor De Cruz. Are there any questions or speakers against this motion?
Deputy Mayor.
Councillor D'Arienzo.
Thank you. I am speaking against this motion because it's my view that at our previous council meeting in April this year, we adopted a substantive position on this matter. At that meeting, Councillor Scott outlined each step of the process, commencing with the optional non-binding poll through to the Independent Boundaries Commission's review and then the Minister's determination. It's incredibly important to correct Councillor Stamoulis's comments to say that this was an entirely proper and properly legislated process, and it included extensive and numerous opportunities for community input. We've accepted the Boundaries Commission's recommendations that the Inner West Council should not be abolished, and we recognise that the huge cost of demerger would have had serious impacts on services that our people depend on. So I consider this matter to be resolved and will be voting against this motion. And I really do think that it's time that all Inner West councillors get on with representing our community. And I think it should start with voting against this motion.
Thank you, Councillor D'Arienzo. Councillor Griffiths.
Yeah, I'm a little bit perplexed by this motion, but we have 3 ahead of us tonight after previously dealing with the matter. I do recognise that there are some people, many even, in the community who are greatly disappointed. I don't think it's a majority of the community that's greatly disappointed. I think, frankly, the demerger of Inner West Council isn't on the majority of the community's mind. They have the cost of living crisis to think about. They have the climate crisis, impending catastrophe, and I think those are the type of issues which are on the community's minds. And when we survey the community about what matters to them, it's generally infrastructure, planning issues, bread and butter service delivery, which turn out to be the priority. But yeah, I do acknowledge that there are many in the community who are disappointed, and I think that too is accurate. I think, yeah, in order for me to vote for this, and I don't have any issue voting for pieces of accurate information, I would want to get rid of. I would want a full stop after predicting outcomes and delete the rest of point 3.
Are you proposing an amendment, Councillor Griffiths?
Yeah, so the amendment is full stop after predicting outcomes in point 3 and then delete of the rest of point 3.
And are those proposed amendments amenable to the mover?
That's fine.
I'd ask you to put your microphone on, Councillor Stamoulis.
The Boundaries Commission did state that and thus can only support the status quo. But you're not happy with that?
No.
Yeah. Okay, that's fine.
And I also want to get rid of the word huge.
Sorry, so let's just deal with these one at a time. So a full stop after confidently predicting outcomes in point 3 and the rest is deleted. That has been accepted by the mover.
Yep, that's good.
Did you have another amendment, Councillor
Yeah, and I
Griffiths?
think we should just avoid from editorialising the vote, and I think we should get rid of huge after 63%.
Is that amenable to the mover?
Sorry, which one?
He would like to propose removing the word huge before 63% majority.
Yeah, that's fine.
Say small majority, apparently. Those have been accepted by the mover, so we are now back to considering the primary motion. Are your comments concluded, Councillor Griffiths? Are there any further speakers against this motion or amendments? If not, I'll go to Councillor Stamoulis for a right of reply.
Yeah, that's good, thanks.
I'll put that to a vote. All in favour? We have Councillors Atkins. Sorry, we have Councillors De Cruz, Atkins, Griffiths, Stamoulis and Lockie. All against? That is everyone else. I declare that defeated. Item 9, improving the demerger process. We're against the demerger, but we want to improve the process. Councillor Stamoulis.
Yes, Councillor Smith, there's been a few changes to the legislation. I'm going to remove items points 2 and 4 from this, if that's okay.
So it would read that Council note that the Boundaries Commission report said that Inner West Council has not yet realised significant economies of scale since the merger. Excluding capital grants and the sale of Tempe land to the state government, Inner West Council has reported deficits across the 7-year period post-merger, and the cost base of Inner West Council has increased by 27% relative to the former council since the merger. Point 2, that Council write to the Minister and Boundaries Commission expressing concerns about a lack of confidence in this process. Is that correct, Councillor Stamoulis?
Thank you, Councillor Smith. Now, in addressing this motion, look, I think it's important that, as I mentioned before, that the way that we go through these processes, to me, the Boundaries Commission process sounds very 19th century in the way that it overrode a community vote. I think it's time to move forward, that the public vote takes precedence. We do that all the time. We do that in elections and polls all the time, that the community takes precedence. and that I don't believe our community, when it votes, needs a Boundaries Commission process to intervene and make subjective judgments. In fact, the Boundaries Commission said you didn't submit the appropriate report that we're after. Well, then why didn't the Boundaries Commission, if it was doing its job properly, say, Council, you have not submitted the right document, do it? So this is where these processes are flawed. This is where they're flawed. They should immediately have said to us, you do that and do it properly. And then send us back to get this process done. And they didn't do that, which I think is fundamental to their job and decision making. There was a failure. So these processes don't work. They simply don't work. The second thing is, we address the issue of cost. Now, we're running deficits, no savings, and our cost base is up 27%. How are we going to resolve that in a cost of living crisis? Well, we know what we've been doing. Our fees and charges have been going up at exorbitant rates both last year and this year. You look at the cumulative impact, it's quite high. That's what's going on. And we know how other councils have addressed their concerns to make their councils work. Canterbury Bankstown, 37% rates increase. Georges River, 32%. Central Coast, 15% a year for 7 years. Snowy's Cootamundra, 51%. The list goes on and on with merged councils. I'd like our council to make a commitment that we're not going to do that. I haven't heard that commitment. And there's a big cost of living pressure, because if you are continuing on with cost bases increasing, no savings and running deficits, well then you will strike...
Councillor Stamoulis, your time has expired. Is there a seconder for this motion? Councillor De Cruz.
Yeah, I think Councillor Stamoulis's comments about the cost increase, I think this year we've put to our community in the budget, in the draft budget proposal on exhibition, that we're going to increase the domestic waste fee and all our fees. And so these are the kinds of things which should have been becoming cheaper rather than increasing in price. So I think that it hasn't proven that it is going to save us lots of money and save the community lots of money. So they were sold a pup, and they noticed that and voted against the pup in December 2021. So I second this motion and commend it to all councillors.
Are there any councillors who would like to speak against the motion? Councillor Griffiths.
Yeah, I will speak against this motion, and I do so mainly on a basis of point one, which I think kind of mischaracterises I guess some of the context behind the report. Of course, we have an increased cost base. The Inner West Council is doing more than councils in the area have previously ever done before. We're running a massive FOGO service, which I don't think should be criticised as being a problem to do with demerger, but actually a fruit of the merger. We're creating new swim spots, like the new swim spot at Kellam Park. We have a new Pride Centre. There's many things which I think we're actually having a bigger council than the three pre-councils were before. We're providing more services. So I take issue with point one on that basis of, I guess, cherry picking certain bits of the Boundaries Commission's report. And the second is, well, I think, it did go through a process, and I think to completely just say that we express concern around the lack of competence on the basis of it's outlined in point one, well, that's not really something that I stand for.
Thank you, Councillor Griffiths. Councillor Drury.
Yeah, look, I was thinking of voting for this, but Councillor Griffiths has just convinced me that I can vote against it.
Thank you, Councillor Drury. Are there any further speakers against this motion? If not, I'll go to Councillor Stamoulis for another right of reply.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. Look, I think in this highly contentious debate on the demerger, where it's been abandoned policy, where it's been absolutely rubbish by every politician, I think and also by the Boundaries Commission, who have mentioned a number of, I've presented the financial indicators there, the key financial indicators about savings, economies of scale, and that very recent report into the 8th year says council is not performing at the moment in terms of its financial outcomes. And that, for councillors, as I say, we manage the financial oversight of this council, that is our key role as a councillor, to make sure it's a viable, robust financial council, and it's accountable and transparent. The Boundaries Commission have written that report. Those comments, they were not my comments. My comment is that I'm expressing concern about a lack of confidence in a process which says I did not receive the documents, therefore the status quo. They have a job to do as a Boundaries Commission. They're employed on good, solid money and as Boundaries Commissioners, and their role is to make sure that when they have a proposal put in front of them, that they if they're not happy with it, they send it back to get that decision right. There was a vote of 63% of our community, a huge vote. No, I don't think any other poll that I'm aware of has come anywhere near this vote.
Madam Chair, has Councillor Stamoulis' time expired?
Not yet. I think there's a few more seconds, Councillor Scott.
There is no poll that I'm aware of that has come anywhere near 63%, and democracy has been overridden, and the Boundaries Commission failed to seek the appropriate information that it should have got in doing its job to a first-class perspective. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Stamoulis. Put that to a vote. All in favour? Councillors De Cruz, Atkins. I presume Councillor Stamoulis is voting in favour of his own motion, and Councillor Lockie. All against? Councillor Griffiths, Scott, Drury, Sardulius, Stevens, Howard, D'Arienzo, and myself. That is defeated. We're on to the last notice of motion on this particular topic from Councillor Stamoulis. Item 10, Demerger Plan for Inner West Council. Councillor Stamoulis.
Councillor Smith, I'm seeking further information about this, so I will withdraw this for tonight and maybe resubmit it for a future meeting. Thank you.
Can I just check with the officer if we need a seconder for the motion by Councillor Stamoulis to withdraw his own motion?
Yeah, we'd require a resolution to withdraw the item.
Is Councillor Stamoulis's move to withdraw the item seconded? Councillor De Cruz? All in favour?
Sorry, I think 10.3 of the Code of Meeting Practice, I know this because I'm looking to withdraw something later. I think 10.3 talks about being able to withdraw at the meeting, but we have to do it at the meeting when we get to the item. I think Councillor Stamoulis can in fact withdraw it. In the past, except for last meeting, we have not voted on these items.
I'll just seek advice from the officer.
Just having a look at 10.3 now. So if a councillor who has submitted a notice of motion wishes to withdraw it after the agenda and business paper for the meeting at which it is to be considered have been sent to the councillors, the councillor may request a withdrawal of the motion when it's before the meeting.
So
you've done so. My interpretation, though, is that it would still require resolution because the item is now on the agenda. So we require a resolution, and if it's to withdraw it, well then so be it, and then council resolve that way.
Thank you. So Councillor Stamoulis has moved to withdraw it. It's been seconded by Councillor De Cruz. So I presume we can now just put that to a vote as per usual. All in favour? All in favour? Can I ask you to put your hands up quite clearly? This is the motion to withdraw Councillor Stamoulis's motion. All right, I'll move that again. All in favour of Councillor Stamoulis's motion to withdraw. We have in favour Councillors De Cruz, Atkins, Griffiths, Stamoulis and Lockie. All against the motion to withdraw. All right, we have a majority against the motion to withdraw. So seeking advice from the officer to confirm that that means that we have to debate it as a regular motion?
That would be the case, yes.
That would be the case. Councillor Stamoulis, would you like to speak to your motion?
Point of order. Does Councillor Stamoulis then, sorry, I find this very unusual. I've never, we've never previously voted on withdrawing motions. I'm not aware of it happening at other councils. Does Councillor Stamoulis have the right to not move his motion in that case? Because he has to move it in order, and it has to be seconded in order for it to be considered.
Yeah, I'll seek advice from the officer.
My understanding is that, there's an item here on the agenda for council to consider. So it's now for council to make a decision, a resolution one way or another, whether to vote on what's here or alternatively submit another motion and vote on that. And even if that motion is the council resolve to withdraw this item from this agenda. And if that's what the majority wishes to do, then that'll be the resolution. That's my interpretation. If there was a request to withdraw the notice of motion after it was submitted but before the paper was published, then we as the officers would remove it from the agenda and nobody would see it. But now that it's already in the public domain, my understanding is that it now has to be resolved one way or another, even if it's to say that council, does not deal with this matter at this meeting.
So, to clarify, we could simply vote it down subsequently. All right. I'll also point out if there's no seconder, it would also just lapse. Councillor Stamoulis, would you like to speak to this motion?
I'm seeking further information on the motion, so I'm withdrawing it. Thank you.
Well, is there a seconder for the motion? Otherwise, it will lapse. There is no seconder. The motion has lapsed. I'm going to propose that we have a 10-minute break and return at 9:23.
Notice of motion tackling cost of living by cutting energy bills for households. The
Chair,
Deputy
if
Mayor.
that's mine, I'm withdrawing that motion, which I
I
guess we'll have to vote on.
I'm going to rule that the Deputy Mayor is able to withdraw a motion. There is no mover for the motion. That has been
Excellent.
withdrawn.
Thank you.
We'll move on to item 12.
Yeah.
Inclusive events. Councillor Howard.
Thank you. I'm proud that our council is committed to leading on inclusion. We run inclusive events like the Trans and Gender Diverse Swim Night and Drag Story Time. We're one of the few councils in Australia to be coordinating an anti-racism strategy. We were the first council in New South Wales to fly the Disability Pride flag and continue to lead on disability inclusion. Shortly, we will be the only council in Australia to run a Pride Centre. These are important initiatives that provide practical, meaningful support for vulnerable and marginalised communities in the Inner West. They're about providing positive, affirming and safe spaces, programming and support. Unfortunately, as we've learned, they can also attract offensive and hateful comments online and negative media attention. We support the right of people to have free speech. However, our policies clearly state and we clearly believe that we do not tolerate hate speech or behaviour that is discriminatory, including commentary that is racist, sexist, ableist, homophobic or transphobic. The noise that can surround our important events can make vulnerable members of our community feel unsafe, including those who these events or initiatives are often designed to support. It can also have an awful impact on staff, including those who are members of our LGBTIQA+ community, who are managing our social media moderation, answering the phone in our libraries, or staffing the desks at our aquatic centres. I can only imagine how traumatising and difficult this must be for them, and I sincerely thank them for the work that they do and express sorry that the work has been difficult when faced with this commentary. You know, I extend my deepest respect to them. They do what they do because they love our community and because they're committed to the core values of inclusion and respect that underpin the Inner West. This motion seeks to reinforce our commitment to those values, to send a strong message to community that we want our inclusive events to be safe, welcoming and supported. It seeks to support our staff too and to convene a high-level meeting with the leadership of council and key organisations in the LGBTIQA+ space to discuss how we can best ensure these events continue to be safe, affirming and inclusive.
Can I second, please, Mr. Mayor?
Thank you, Councillor Howard, and thank you not just for your passion and principle, but also for being so succinct, a lesson we could all learn from. Councillor Atkins.
Thank you. I'm very happy to support this and I strongly support the development of a safety protocol. I echo everything that Councillor Howard has said and I'm sure we all do. And I also note the work currently underway to develop a community safety action plan. I do have an amendment. It relates to a group which has been very successful in building resilience and empowering community in relation to events like Drag Story Time in particular. They are well known and highly respected in Victoria and amongst organisations in New South Wales, and it will be marvellous for Council to work with them. And in fact, I understand from staff that we are already in contact with them. I have provided this to Councillor Howard ahead of time.
I incorporate them.
Okay, it's incorporated. Is there anyone who wishes to amend the motion or to speak against it? Put that. All those in favour, against, declare that carried. I rule that Councillor Shetty's motion, which is not here to move, is redundant as we've already resolved to complete these crossings. Thank you for that. Item 14, notice of motion, violence against women. Councillor Atkins.
Yes, I move that motion. I have a couple of amendments which I provided to staff that simply take account of the fact that we are no longer in May. So if they could be displayed, they simply amend item 4 to state that from May 2025, during May each year, council promote, etc. And that on the 28th of May, they do a social media post about LGBTQ. Last month was Domestic and Family Violence Prevention Month and an appropriate time to draw attention to the woeful underfunding of domestic and family violence services. We've all seen the media reporting and participated in or know of the recent rallies held calling for action to be taken. Domestic and family violence is an enormous and continuing issue in this country and in this state. But as always, we have to wait for some horrific act or acts for governments to really take notice and make more investment in the services required to prevent domestic and family violence and to assist once it has occurred. I acknowledge that on the 6th of May 2024, as a result of the New South Wales government announced an emergency domestic and family violence funding package of $230 million over 4 years, which is welcome, but it is still less than $60 million a year. Even after the money from this latest emergency package is included, New South Wales is still likely to be funding responses to domestic and family violence at between half and 2/3 that which is being provided in Victoria. Following Victoria's State Royal Commission into Domestic and Family Violence, the Victorian Government invested massive amounts of recurring funding into the sector, over $3.8 billion, and also implemented all 227 of the recommendations from the Royal Commission. Since increasing funding and taking real action, there have been notably fewer deaths in Victoria compared to New South Wales. Research in this space has made it clear, point out that Minister Rose Jackson herself acknowledged on the 8th of May in debate on a motion from Abigail Boyd that we're behind, we need to catch up. It's difficult to know what success looks like. At the very least, our state should be doing what Victoria is doing. Could I have a...
Councillor Howard, for how long? Seconded by Councillor Stevens. All those in favour, against, declare that carried.
Research in this space has made it clear that the financial position of women is one of the biggest reasons for them not being able to leave violent and abusive relationships. In addition, during COVID, it seems that rates of domestic and family violence decreased, despite families being locked down together. This has been attributed, in part at least, to the higher rate of job seeker, which relieved financial pressure on families, which is one of the factors which contributes to domestic violence. In 2001, rates of violence in the most disadvantaged parts of New South Wales were about 5.6 times higher than in the most advantaged suburbs. In 2023, these differences were almost 6.5 times higher. Providing adequate financial support to vulnerable people during times of economic uncertainty is critical to reducing domestic violence and its harmful effects. This is why we need to not only call for more funding for frontline services, but for an increase in the rate of job seeker. Thank you.
Is there a seconder for the motion? You wish to speak to it? Thanks. Okay, if there's no discussion.
Mr. Mayor?
Yeah.
I have an amendment that I've sent to the minute taker and forwarded in advance to Councillor Atkins.
Good of you. You wish to speak to it?
Yes, please. I'd like
to... taker is able to display it on the screen?
No?
No.
I provided an amendment to the minute taker. I'd be happy to second Councillor D'Arienzo's amendment, and I'd also be happy to re-forward that if it's not available to the minute takers now.
I think it's difficult to speak to it without displaying it on the screen, unless someone wants to read it out.
Would you allow me a moment to send it to the minute takers?
Sure.
Actually,
you haven't received it? Okay. Is there anyone else? I'll come back to Councillor D'Arienzo. Is there anyone else who would like to speak to the motion or to amend it? Okay.
Can I read it if I
You can. Can you provide it to the minute takers as well?
Yeah. You've got it? You don't have it yet? Okay, let me read it, and Councillor Scott, if I can ask if you can send it to the minute takers. Council notes that the New South Wales, I'm going to speak really quickly because it's quite a substantial amendment. The Council notes the New South Wales Government announced $230 million over 4 years as part of an emergency package to enhance support for domestic, family and sexual violence victims and survivors and expand programs that reduce the rate of violence against women and children. 8 notes that this package includes historic reforms, including $38 million to implement the first dedicated primary prevention strategy in New South Wales, $48 million to roll out staying home, leaving violence statewide, and expand the integrated domestic and family violence services. Notes these measures will work to complement the broader package, including $48 million to secure and increase funding for workers who support children accompanying their mother to refuges, $700,000 to boost the New South Wales domestic violence line, $8.1 million for the all-in early childhood pilot, $5 million for workforce training on the implementation of a newly developed risk assessment framework and quality standards, $3.6 million to expand domestic violence New South Wales peak body, $5 million for research into perpetrators and effective interventions, $45 million to improve bail laws and justice system responses, nearly $24 million for specialist DV support workers within the justice system, $2 million to support the domestic violence death review team and its work to deliver robust research around risk factors, trends and impacts of service delivery, $2.1 million over 2 years to improve and continue corrective services programs, equips domestic and family violence, delivered to offenders in custody and under supervision in the community to prevent reoffending. Council notes that funding in the May 2024 federal budget delivers $925.2 million over 5 years from 23 to 24, which will provide financial support and support services for victim survivors leaving a violent intimate partner relationship by improving and making permanent the Leaving Violence program. Have we got it on the screen yet? And I'm up to number 11. If you can just scroll down a bit. Yeah. Notes that the federal budget also includes a new decision to direct $1 billion of funding for the National Housing Infrastructure Facility towards crisis and transitional accommodation for women and children fleeing domestic violence and youth. Notes that the funding in this budget brings the Labor government's total investment to over $3.4 billion to support women's safety and national plan to end violence against women and children 22 to 32. And point 13, rights to the Premier Chris Minns and Prime Minister and Member for Greenlaw Anthony Albanese to thank their governments for this investment.
So you're adding these points as an amendment in addition to the primary motion?
That's right.
You're not deleting anything?
No, not deleting.
That's an amendment. Is there a seconder for the amendment? If not, that will lapse. Yeah. Councillor Drury?
I'm happy to second it. Oh, sorry. Fine.
Yeah, it should be.
Who would like to second the amendment? No, that will lapse.
I'm happy to second the amendment. Yes, no, I'm happy to second the amendment. I have said that twice.
Well, there's two people doing it.
To engage from on here.
Councillor Drury, is it you or is it Councillor Scott? Okay, Councillor Scott, please proceed. You wish to speak to it?
Thank you. It is important to give context to this motion that there has been a recognition of the domestic and family violence crisis and that state and federal governments are taking action, not to diminish the important call that we are making to do more, but there is some context to this.
Okay, I'll ask the mover of the motion if they're willing to incorporate the amendment.
No, I'm sorry. I note that some of this is indeed factual, but if it is added to the motion, it almost has a self-congratulatory tone that detracts from the point that despite these amounts, it's not enough. And that's most of the point of my motion. So no, I'm not accepting it.
God forbid that anyone would be guilty of a self-congratulatory tone in here. Okay. I'll put the amendment, the Darienzo Scott amendment. All those in favour, please raise your hands. That has been carried. All those against? That is 8 votes to 5. That has been carried. That's incorporated into the primary motion. Is there any further amendment? If not, I'll go to the mover for a right of reply.
I waive my right of reply. Thank you very much.
There you go. Okay, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Against? Declare that carried unanimously. Now, I'll just note that it is 9:35. It's interesting. Some people say that the meeting expands to fill the time allocated to it. We're only an hour off our normal finishing time, even though we had a much reduced agenda. It's like there might be a dynamic at play. But I don't want to cut anyone off, obviously. We've already dealt with item 15, which got brought forward by Councillor Griffiths. Item 16, housing. Would you
I'd like to
refrain from
withdraw
speaking? Withdrawn.
that. Thank you. I
Excellent.
believe
That's
it's
withdrawn. Excellent. Mood T, item 17, that's mine. I'm going to refrain from speaking. Good practice when you can do so. Anyone who wishes to amend it? Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor D'Arienzo. All those in favour? Against? Declare that carried. See how quickly a motion can go through when people don't need to speak? I'm going to do the same with the next one. Even though I would like to speak to the issues in Pritchard Street, I'm not going to raise it because so much time has been taken up already with politician speeches. Is there a seconder for that motion? Seconded by Councillor Stevens. Is there anyone who wishes to amend it or oppose it? I'll put that. All those in favour? Against? Declare that carried. Wow, it's quite a contrast. Richard Murden Reserve, moved by Councillor Scott. Do you wish to speak to it?
I don't have anything that I need to say to this substantive motion. I will note that at the last 4 motions we did try to put through en bloc, possibly twice, and there were members in this chamber who insisted that they need to speak, but not me. I'm happy for this one to go.
Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Stevens. Do you wish to speak to it? Look at this self-restraint. It's quite a contrast. Is there anyone who needs to speak to amend the motion or to oppose it? No. Hard to know why it was carried over then. I'll put that. All those in favour? Against? Declare that carried. Item 20.
Chair, I'm sorry to slow us down ever so slightly. This is my motion, and I don't think I need to speak to it. I think it's self-explanatory. I have just quite recently sent an amendment to the minute taker, which I'm hoping they've received.
I'll just clarify that. Have you received the amendment?
Thank
Excellent.
you. It's
Can I
just
ask
an
that
addition to
it's
point 3.
displayed on the screen.
The other quick amendment I just ask is that July should read June. My apologies, being the first month of winter. Other than that, it's self-explanatory.
Do you want to just address the amendment, Councillor?
Yes, I will. So this motion was heavily inspired by the trial initiated at Henson Park by Councillor Howard last year, which was incredibly successful. And I think that the part of the success in the way Councillor Howard conducted the trial was in holding a trial period of 2 months, writing to residents, having signage erected at the ground to inform visitors of the trial and providing an avenue to provide feedback on the trial, and then having a report back to council. I think that process worked really well, and I'd like to emulate it at all other sports grounds in the LGA and hopefully get the same result.
Anyone who wishes to amend the motion? Seconded by Councillor Stevens. I'll put that. All those in favour? Please proceed.
Yeah, I just wondered if the officers have any comments on the on this at all, the extension to all ovals.
I'll put that question to the council officers. Do the council officers have any comment at all on the resolution placed by the elected representative? No? No comments to be offered. I'll put that. All those in favour? Against? Declare that carried. That's how quickly stuff can go through when people don't need to speak to everything. Last item, sub-minimum wages. Councillor De Cruz. Oh, it's a question on notice. So we're done? I'll declare the meeting closed.